In this video, we'll be taking a deep dive into the power scale of Naruto characters. Let's get started. How power actually works in Naruto. Alright, before we start arguing about whether Itachi could beat Madara or if Naruto is actually stronger than Sasuke, we need to talk about how power actually works in this universe. Every single power scaling debate on Reddit, Twitter, YouTube comments, wherever, starts with someone who skipped this part. They jump straight into my favorite character solos, your favorite character, without understanding the basic rules of the game. So, congratulations on being here. You're already ahead of 90% of the discourse. 3 things you need to understand: chakra, and why having more of it means less than you think. The 3 combat systems and why most characters only excel at 1 or 2, and hacks abilities, the cheat codes that break conventional scaling entirely. Starting with chakra, because this is where casual fans get it wrong. The intuitive assumption goes like this: chakra is fuel for ninja techniques, therefore more chakra equals stronger ninja. Bigger gas tank means you drive further. Makes sense on paper. Completely falls apart when you actually watch the show. Kakashi Hatake, copy ninja, learned over 1,000 jutsu, trained by the 4th Hokage, became the 6th Hokage, fought actual gods by the end of the series. His chakra reserves? Described repeatedly as below average. The borrowed Sharingan drained him so badly, he'd collapse after extended battles. When he unlocked Kamui, he could use it maybe 3 times before passing out. Watch his fight against Deidara in early Shippuden and count how many times characters mention Kakashi running low. It happens constantly. The man operates on fumes. Compare that to Naruto. Uzumaki Bloodline gives him massive reserves. The Ninetales multiplies that by infinity. He creates shadow clones by the hundreds clones that split his chakra evenly, meaning each one has more chakra than most ninja have total. He's working with a gas tank the size of a swimming pool, while Kakashi runs on a motorcycle engine. And yet Kakashi was Naruto's teacher. Kakashi was elite. Kakashi kept pace with threats that should have overwhelmed him because raw chakra quantity is just table stakes. What actually determines power is what you do with chakra. Technique matters. Timing matters. The specific abilities you access matter enormously. So when scaling characters, asking who has more chakra is basically asking who can fight longer. Useful, sure. Irrelevant if the guy with smaller reserves kills you in the first exchange. Moving to the 3 combat systems, because this is where Naruto gets genuinely interesting. Ninjutsu, the flashy stuff. Fireballs, water dragons, Rasengans, anything requiring hand seals and chakra manipulation. Most ninja default here because it's versatile and has the highest ceiling for destruction. Want to drop a meteor on someone? Ninjutsu. Want to summon a giant toad? Ninjutsu. Want to create a ball of wind that shreds people at the cellular level? You get it. Taijutsu, pure physical combat. Punches, kicks, martial arts. Here's the fascinating part. It typically requires 0 chakra. The techniques run entirely on physical conditioning and training. This is why Rock Lee and Might Guy stand out so dramatically. They're operating on a completely different resource system. While everyone else worries about chakra management, these 2 run on muscle, willpower, and an almost concerning dedication to physical excellence. The 8 gates push this to its limit, forcibly removing the body's natural limiters to access power, rivaling the strongest ninjutsu users alive. Madara himself declared Guy the strongest taijutsu user he'd ever faced. Episodes 418 through 420. A guy who punches really hard earned genuine respect from an immortal ninja demigod. Genjutsu, the illusion category, works by disrupting chakra flow in the target's brain, manipulating their senses to create false experiences. Sounds incredibly powerful, right? Perfect assassination tool. Here's why it's rare. Genjutsu requires precise chakra control and advanced intelligence to pull off convincingly. Even Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, can't do it well. The skill floor is too high, so most ninjas stick to ninjutsu's tangible effects and taijutsu's reliable simplicity. Genjutsu specialists like Kurenai or the Uchiha with their Sharingan are genuine outliers. Why does this matter for scaling? Most characters specialize in 1, maybe 2 categories. Naruto is almost entirely ninjutsu. Sasuke gets ninjutsu plus genjutsu through his Sharingan. Guy and Lee are pure taijutsu with literally 0 capability elsewhere. When these characters fight, matchups depend heavily on which systems clash. A genjutsu specialist against a Sharingan user is screwed because Sharingan sees through illusions automatically. A taijutsu user against long-range ninjutsu has to close distance while dodging fireballs. Wrong matchup makes a stronger character look weak. Right matchup elevates someone punching above their weight class. Now the fun part. Hacks abilities. The cheat codes that break conventional scaling because they ignore normal rules entirely. Kamui, Obito's version, makes him intangible. Any attack passes through his body like smoke. You could have planet-destroying punch strength and your fist still phases through harmlessly. Raw power becomes meaningless against someone who opts out of being hit. The ability has timing windows and limitations, but exploiting those requires specific knowledge. Minato figured it out. Most people just die confused. Izanagi, reality rewrite. An Uchiha can undo their own death by sacrificing vision in one eye. You landed the killing blow? Congratulations, that didn't happen. They decided reality went differently. They're standing behind you now. The cost is permanent blindness, which sounds steep until you remember Uchiha treat eye transplants like fashion accessories. Reaper Death Seal. What Hiruzen used against Orochimaru summons a death god that kills both user and target. Hiruzen was old and past his prime during that fight. Reaper Death Seal would still kill literally anyone if deployed successfully. Madara at full power? Dead. The technique says we both die now, and raw power cannot argue with that. That's what hacks means. When someone asks, who wins, character A or character B, the answer often hinges on whether specific hacks abilities can deploy. Sometimes the weaker character wins, because they have an ability that just works regardless of stats. Quick note on elemental nature types. Yes, Naruto has rock, paper, scissors elements. Fire beats wind beats lightning, so on. Should create strategic depth. In practice, matters for Chunin exam fights. By war arc scaling, it's irrelevant. High-tier characters either master multiple elements or have abilities transcending the wheel entirely. Sharingan, Rinnegan, Sage Mode, none care about your element advantage. The system exists, informs early discussions. Then the power ceiling rises so dramatically it stops mattering. Finally, what Kage level actually means, because this term gets thrown around constantly, and it's almost meaningless without context. Kage means village leader. So Kage level should mean strong enough to lead a village. The problem? Village leaders vary wildly. Tsunade is Kage level, 5th Hokage. Medical Master, super strength, regeneration. She fought Madara and got folded with minimal effort. Hashirama was also Kage level, 1st Hokage, wood style, capturing all 9-tailed beasts. Beat Madara, fused with the 9 tails. Both Kage level. One lost to Madara embarrassingly. One beat Madara at his strongest. The term contains such massive range that using it for precise scaling is almost worthless. Fan communities argue endlessly about where the cutoff sits. For this video, Kage level means strong enough to plausibly hold village leadership through combat ability. Still a huge range, but at least we have a working definition. That's the foundation. Chakra quantity matters less than application. 3 combat systems exist and most characters specialize narrowly. Hacks abilities break conventional scaling by winning through mechanics. Elemental types stop mattering at high levels. Kage level is a range, not a measurement. Now we can actually start scaling characters. And we're starting where power scaling began, for most of us the Chunin exams, where everybody was relative, upsets meant something, and we learned the most important lesson Naruto ever taught about power. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose. The Chunin exams, establishing the baseline. The Chunin exams arc is where Naruto power scaling actually begins. Everything before this, the Land of Waves, Zabuza, all of it was prologue. Important prologue? Sure, but prologue. The Chunin exams gave us a tournament bracket with clearly defined matchups, winners, losers, and enough information to start making real comparisons between characters. Everyone was relative. Everyone was scalable, and upsets actually meant something because we understood the stakes. This arc spans episodes 20 through 67, which is a massive chunk of the original series. Kishimoto spent nearly 50 episodes establishing a baseline power level for the entire Naruto universe, and honestly, it holds up remarkably well. The scaling logic introduced here carries through the entire franchise, even when the power ceiling eventually shoots into the stratosphere during the war arc. So let's break down what this arc teaches us about how power works in Naruto. The preliminary rounds give us our first real taste of structured combat comparison. 21 genin enter, 10 advance to the finals. Each fight is one-on-one, continues until knockout or forfeit, with a proctor ready to intervene if someone's about to die. Clean rules, clear outcomes. The dream scenario for anyone trying to figure out who beats who. The Neji versus Hinata fight, episodes 46 and 47, establishes something crucial about the Hyuga clan and about prodigies in general. Neji dominates this fight, completely. He spends half the match psychologically dismantling Hinata before physically doing the same thing. Both fighters use the same style, gentle fist, channeling chakra through palm strikes to damage internal organs and disrupt chakra pathways. Both have the Byakugan, the all-seeing eye that eliminates blind spots and lets them see chakra networks. Same clan, same techniques, same dojutsu. Neji wins decisively because talent gaps exist and they matter. The series frames him as a generational prodigy, someone born with gifts that hard work struggles to match. Hinata trained. Hinata tried. Hinata still got destroyed so badly that Neji nearly killed her before the proctor intervened. This fight tells us that in Naruto, starting advantages compound. Neji's natural talent let him master techniques faster, which let him train more advanced applications, which widened the gap further. The rich get richer. Naruto watching this fight from the stands, screaming encouragement at Hinata, vowing to beat Neji in the finals. That's foreshadowing for one of the arc's most important scaling moments. But we'll get there. Rock Lee versus Gaara, episodes 48 through 50, is the single most important power scaling fight in part 1. I genuinely believe this. The amount of information this fight gives us about how Naruto combat works is staggering. Lee enters this match with a clear disadvantage on paper. Gaara's sand defense activates automatically. He doesn't even have to think about it. Any attack coming toward him gets blocked by sand faster than conscious reaction time. Lee uses pure taijutsu with zero ninjutsu or genjutsu capability. He has to hit Gaara to win. Gaara's entire fighting style is built around making that impossible. So what happens? Lee removes the training weights on his legs. Might Guy, his sensei, gave permission. And the weights hit the ground like bombs, cratering the arena floor. The speed boost is so dramatic that Lee starts hitting Gaara, actually landing strikes. For the first time in Gaara's life, someone is too fast for his sand to track. Here's where it gets interesting for scaling purposes. Lee is faster than Gaara's automatic defense. Lee is stronger than we thought. Lee is winning. And then Gaara reveals the armor of sand, a layer of hardened sand coating his skin under his clothes, a secondary defense for exactly this situation. Lee's hits are landing. They're doing reduced damage because Gaara planned for this scenario. Lee adapts. He uses the front lotus, a devastating technique that requires opening the first gate of the 8-gate system. The move works by spinning the opponent into the ground at high velocity. Lee deploys it perfectly. Gaara survives by substituting with a sand clone at the last moment, letting the clone take the impact while he escapes. Lee opens more gates. The 5th gate. His skin turns red from increased blood flow. His speed and power multiply beyond anything we've seen from a genin in this exam. He uses the reverse lotus, an even more devastating combination of strikes and throws that should kill almost anyone. Gaara survives. Gaara disperses his gourd into sand at the last second to cushion his landing, then uses Sand Coffin to crush Lee's arm and leg. Fight over, Gaara wins. Now think about what this fight actually tells us. Lee was faster. Lee was arguably stronger in pure physical output. Lee was landing hits. Lee had the superior technique, the superior strategy, the superior combat reads. Lee did everything right. Lee lost. Because matchups matter more than stats. Gaara's specific abilities, automatic defense, backup armor, sand manipulation that lets him cushion falls and crush limbs from a distance hard counter Lee's approach. Lee needs to hit things. Gaara is specifically designed to make hitting things ineffective and punish people who try. Even when Lee pushed past his limits, opened gates that damaged his own body, and achieved speed that exceeded Gaara's reaction time, Gaara's toolkit had answers. This is the foundational lesson of Naruto power scaling. Being stronger does not guarantee victory. Being faster does not guarantee victory. Having the right abilities for the matchup determines victory. A character who loses to Gaara might absolutely demolish someone who beats Gaara, because triangular scaling exists everywhere in this series. Also worth noting, this fight establishes Gaara as the final boss of Part 1. Everyone watching understands that Gaara is operating on a different level than the other genin. His abilities have answers for everything thrown at them. He's barely tried during the entire exam. The Sand siblings came to Konoha with an agenda beyond passing a test, and Gaara is the weapon at the center of that agenda. Naruto vs. Neji in the finals, episodes 60 through 62, pays off the promise Naruto made while watching Hinata get destroyed. And it teaches us something different about scaling the wildcard factor of Naruto specifically. Neji dominates the early portions of this fight the same way he dominated Hinata. The gentle fist shuts down chakra pathways. The Byakugan sees through Naruto's shadow clones, identifying the real one immediately. Neji's technical superiority seems insurmountable. He lectures Naruto about fate and destiny, about how failures remain failures, about how the gap between them cannot be closed through effort alone. Naruto closes the gap by tapping into the Nine-Tails chakra. This is the first time in the series where Naruto strategically accesses the Fox's power during a sanctioned match. Earlier encounters with Kurama's chakra happened reactively, moments of desperation where the Fox leaked power unbidden. Here, Naruto deliberately calls upon it to overwhelm Neji's technical advantage with raw force. And it works. Naruto wins. The failure beats the prodigy. The dead last defeats the Hyuga genius through determination, strategy, and a massive reservoir of power that exists outside normal genin limits. For scaling purposes, this fight introduces the Naruto-specific complication that defines his power level throughout the series. Naruto as a baseline genin is unimpressive. Naruto with access to Kurama chakra is terrifying. These are functionally two different characters sharing the same body, and any scaling discussion has to specify which version we're talking about. Base Naruto loses to Neji. Nine-Tails enhanced Naruto wins convincingly. The gap between those versions is the gap between struggling genin and legitimate threat. The unfinished bracket haunts power scaling discussions to this day. The Chunin exams finals got interrupted by the Konoha Crush Orochimaru's invasion before several matches could happen. Sasuke vs. Gaara started but never finished. Shino vs. Kankuro got forfeited. The bracket never resolved. So who wins the whole thing if the invasion never happens? Gaara seems like the obvious answer. He demolished Lee, who was probably the most dangerous combatant in the entire exam from a pure physical standpoint. Sasuke's showing against Gaara before the interruption was impressive. His new speed let him land hits. His Chidori actually drew blood, but the fight was trending toward Gaara's favor when everything went sideways. Gaara's transformations, the partial Shukaku releases, hadn't even started yet. Shino is a dark horse candidate that people sleep on. His bugs counter a lot of abilities by draining chakra directly. Against Kankuro, who forfeited, Shino would have won. Against the Sand siblings in general, his tactical approach and unusual skill set create favorable matchups. Shikamaru demonstrated absurd strategic capability against Temari, outmaneuvering her completely before forfeiting because actually winning sounded like too much work. Classic Shikamaru. His shadow imitation technique has devastating potential against the right opponents. Anyone who relies on staying mobile gets shut down hard. My personal take? Gaara wins the tournament 9 times out of 10 if it runs to completion. The only scenario where he loses involves Sasuke landing a clean Chidori before Gaara starts transforming. And even then, Gaara's demonstrated ability to survive lethal damage through sand substitution makes that uncertain. Gaara was built different. The demon container with automatic defenses and crushing offense was playing a different game than everyone else at that exam. The Chunin exams arc does something else important for long-term scaling. It establishes the power ceiling for normal elite genin. Lee, with 5 gates open, represents roughly the maximum a non-powered up genin can achieve through pure training. Neji, with his Byakugan mastery, represents the prodigy ceiling. Gaara represents what happens when you add a tailed beast to the equation. Everything that comes later, Shippuden, the Akatsuki, the War Arc, actual god-tier characters, builds on this foundation. When we say someone is Chunin level or low Jonin level, we're using the Chunin exams as our measuring stick. Lee with gates open is the upper bound of that tier. Gaara transcends it through circumstances of birth, foreshadowing how bloodlines and tailed beasts eventually dominate the power structure. This arc also introduces the concept of incomplete information affecting outcomes. Shikamaru won his fight by using knowledge Kin didn't have about her own shadow positions. Naruto beat Kiba by transforming in layers, creating confusion about who was who. Sasuke copied Lee's taijutsu by watching it with his Sharingan, then deployed it against Yoroi, who had no idea what was coming. Intelligence and information gathering matter alongside raw power. The Chunin exams taught us how to watch Naruto fights. Pay attention to matchups. Consider what each character knows about the other. Remember that having the wrong abilities for a situation can matter more than overall power level. Watch for transformations and power-ups that change the equation mid-fight. These lessons become essential once we hit Shippuden and characters start fighting with abilities that rewrite reality. The foundation holds. A character with the perfect counter ability can beat someone statistically superior. Information asymmetry creates upsets. And some characters, the Jinchuriki, the Kekkei Genkai users, the ones with special circumstances, operate outside the normal scaling curve entirely. Gaara foreshadows Naruto's eventual position at the top of that curve. Both demon containers, both outcasts, both operating with power sources that make conventional scaling complicated. The difference is Gaara started with control and became the terrifying threat we see in this arc, while Naruto starts with chaos and spends the entire series learning to harness what lives inside him. The parallel matters for scaling because it shows us the ceiling Naruto is climbing toward. Gaara at the Chunin exams is approximately where Naruto needs to reach before he can be considered truly elite. And even Gaara, terrifying as he seems here, is small potatoes compared to what's coming. The Akatsuki hunt tailed beasts. Orochimaru treats S-rank criminals like expendable pawns. Itachi Uchiha massacred his entire clan in a single night. The Chunin exams are our baseline. Everything scales from here. If you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe to our channel. Kakashi vs. Guy, the eternal rivals. 50 wins, 49 losses. That's Kakashi's record against Guy at the start of part 1, and somehow that 1-point difference has remained consistent throughout their entire rivalry. They've been competing since childhood across every imaginable contest, eating challenges, rock, paper, scissors, races, you name it. By pure numbers, they're basically equal. Two sides of the same coin, rivals in the truest sense. Except the scoreboard is lying to you. See, when we talk about power scaling, we care about combat ability, and the 50-50 record includes contests that have nothing to do with fighting. Kakashi could be winning all the combat-related challenges, while Guy dominates the curry-eating competitions, and the overall score would still look balanced. The number tells us they're competitive with each other. It tells us nothing about who actually wins when fists start flying. So, let's figure that out. Kakashi Hatake graduated from the academy at age 5, made Chunin at 6, became a Jonin at 12. The man was such a prodigy that even Sakumo Hatake, his father, the White Fang of Konoha, someone feared across entire nations, openly acknowledged his son's talent. Kakashi earned the nickname Copy Ninja by reportedly learning over 1,000 jutsu through his borrowed Sharingan. He served in the Anbu, became Hokage, and throughout his career was consistently ranked among Konoha's strongest ninja. The databooks explicitly state his intelligence surpasses Shikamaru, his nose is better than Kiba's, he's more skilled with the Sharingan than Sasuke was at the time, and his taijutsu exceeds Rock Lee's. That last point matters. Kakashi's taijutsu is described as better than Rock Lee's, and Rock Lee was trained by Guy. The implication being that Kakashi could hold his own against Guy in pure hand-to-hand combat even without relying on ninjutsu or Sharingan tricks. Guy, meanwhile, couldn't even pass the academy entrance exam on his first attempt. He was so bad at ninjutsu and genjutsu that he simply gave up on them entirely, dedicating his life to taijutsu because it was the only path available to him. His father, Might Do, was mockingly called the Eternal Genin because he never advanced beyond that rank despite decades of service. Guy watched his father die using the 8 gates to protect him from the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, and that sacrifice shaped everything Guy became afterward. On paper, Kakashi is the obvious winner. Natural genius versus hard work underdog. Versatile ninjutsu master versus one-trick taijutsu specialist. 1,000 jutsu versus one fighting style. The anime tells a different story. Throughout Part 1 and early Shippuden, Kakashi and Guy are portrayed as genuine equals in combat effectiveness. They coordinate seamlessly during missions, understand each other's thinking without words, and trust each other with their lives. When Itachi and Kisame show up in Konoha, Kakashi warns everyone about Itachi's Sharingan Genjutsu. Guy already knows. He developed a counter years ago, fighting by watching his opponent's feet rather than their eyes. The Sharingan, Kakashi's greatest weapon, has a hard counter that Guy figured out specifically because of their rivalry. The 8 gates system is where Guy's scaling gets complicated. His father taught him this technique as a child, and it fundamentally breaks the normal rules of combat power. The human body has 8 internal gates that limit chakra flow and physical output, serving as safety mechanisms to prevent self-destruction. Opening these gates removes those limiters one by one, multiplying the user's strength, speed, and chakra at the cost of severe physical damage. Gate 1, the gate of opening, releases the brain's limits on muscle usage. Gate 2, the gate of healing, forcibly increases physical strength and re-energizes the body. Gate 3, the gate of life, increases blood flow and turns the skin red. Gate 4 through 6 continue escalating the enhancements while the damage compounds. Gate 7, the gate of wonder, grants access to techniques like the Daytime Tiger, a compressed air cannon that Guy describes as a one-hit kill move. And Gate 8, the gate of death, multiplies the user's power to levels that rival the absolute strongest characters in the series, while guaranteeing death within minutes. Guy mastered all 8 gates. The training required decades of dedicated conditioning, pushing his body to handle strain that would kill normal ninja outright. By the 4th Shinobi World War, he could open the first 7 gates instantly without sequencing through them, endure the 6th gate with only noticeable exhaustion, and resist the 7th gate's after effects long enough to keep fighting. Kakashi's Sharingan, meanwhile, came with massive drawbacks because he's not an Uchiha. The eye constantly drained his chakra, even when covered. He could only use his Mangekyo ability, Kamui, 3 or 4 times per day before collapsing from exhaustion. Extended battles left him bedridden for days. The borrowed power that made him famous was simultaneously his greatest weakness. So who wins in a standard fight? Kakashi, probably. His versatility, intelligence, and tactical adaptability give him more options. He can fight at range, use genjutsu, deploy elemental ninjutsu, and predict Guy's movements with the Sharingan. Guy's taijutsu mastery is terrifying, but Kakashi has answers for pure physical fighters. The copy ninja earned his reputation by handling threats far above his apparent weight class through preparation and adaptability. Then the war arc happened. When Madara Uchiha became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, the power scaling ceiling shattered completely. Madara was effectively a god immortal, regenerating, wielding truth-seeking balls that could erase anything they touched, laughing off attacks from the entire allied shinobi forces. Naruto and Sasuke, freshly powered up by the Sage of Six Paths himself, were the only ones who could meaningfully damage him. Everyone else was scenery. Guy opened the 8th gate. Episodes 418 through 420 contain some of the most visually stunning and emotionally devastating sequences in the entire anime. Guy's body turns red and begins literally steaming from the internal heat. He attacks Madara with Evening Elephant, a technique that launches compressed air cannons through sheer kicking speed. Each step of the technique hits harder than the last, and Madara, the immortal demigod who's been casually tanking everything, actually has to take it seriously. Madara calls Guy the strongest taijutsu user he's ever faced. Coming from someone who fought Hashirama Senju, that statement carries weight. Guy's final technique, Night Guy, is a single kick delivered at such speed that the space around him warps from the velocity. The attack connects. It obliterates half of Madara's torso. A guy who can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu, whose entire career was built on compensating for his lack of natural talent, nearly killed the strongest villain the series had produced up to that point through pure physical force and the willingness to sacrifice his life. Madara survives because he's the Ten Tails Jinchuriki and regenerates from essentially anything. Guy's leg shatters from the recoil. His body begins crumbling into ash from the inside as the 8th gate claims its price. Only Naruto's intervention, using Six Paths chakra to stabilize Guy's life force, prevents his death. Guy survives the war but loses the use of his leg permanently, confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. By the end of the 4th Shinobi World War, Kakashi himself acknowledges that Guy has surpassed him. Now here's where it gets interesting for power scaling purposes. During the Kaguya fight, Obito's dying spirit temporarily possesses Kakashi's body and grants him both Mangekyo Sharingan simultaneously, complete with Six Paths chakra. This double Mangekyo Sharingan Kakashi, or DMS Kakashi, can spam Kamui without exhaustion, phase through attacks like Obito did, and manifest a perfect Susanoo, the giant chakra avatar that represents the peak of Sharingan abilities. He contributes meaningfully to the fight against Kaguya, an opponent even stronger than Madara. DMS Kakashi is, for approximately one episode, one of the strongest characters in the series. The question becomes, who peaks higher, 8th Gate Guy or DMS Kakashi? The answer depends on what you value. DMS Kakashi has more versatility, more defensive options through phasing, and his attacks ignore conventional durability through Kamui's dimensional warping. 8th Gate Guy has raw destructive output that impressed an immortal god and nearly killed him through pure force. My take? 8th Gate Guy peaks higher in pure attack power. Night Guy is the single strongest physical attack any human character ever produces in the series. DMS Kakashi peaks higher in overall combat utility because his kit has answers for more situations. The cruel irony is that both peaks are temporary. Guy's 8th Gate lasts minutes before killing him. Kakashi's DMS vanishes when Obito's spirit moves on. Neither version is their real power level. Both represent borrowed time, desperate measures deployed at the end of the world against enemies that required everything they had. For the majority of their lives, Kakashi and Guy were genuine equals who pushed each other to improve. Kakashi's natural genius forced Guy to train harder. Guy's relentless work ethic reminded Kakashi that talent alone means nothing without dedication. Their rivalry made both of them stronger than they would have been alone. That's the real answer to Kakashi versus Guy. The question assumes one of them has to be definitively stronger. The anime argues they're stronger together than either would be apart. Their 50-50 record represents a lifetime of mutual respect and genuine friendship disguised as competition. Also, Kisame Hoshigaki fought Guy 3 separate times throughout the series, and Guy didn't recognize him on any of those occasions. The man who memorized 1,000 jutsu through his Sharingan, who developed counters for abilities he'd only seen once, who built his entire fighting style around observation and adaptation. That guy couldn't remember the face of someone he'd fought repeatedly. Guy's memory for faces is apparently terrible. Sometimes the most powerful ninja in the world still has blind spots. Kakashi's was his borrowed eye draining his chakra. Guy's was recognizing people he'd literally tried to kill before. Rivals until the end. Equals in the ways that matter. And when the world needed saving, they both stepped up, willing to give everything they had. That's what makes this rivalry one of the best in anime. There's no jealousy that festers into hatred. Just two friends who made each other better through decades of competition, culminating in a war where both reached heights they never could have achieved alone. The Sannin problem: 3 equals who aren't equal. The legendary Sannin. 3 students of the 3rd Hokage. 3 ninjas so powerful that Hanzo of the Salamander, a guy who fought the entire shinobi world to a standstill, gave them that title specifically because they survived fighting him when everyone else died. The framing is clear. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru are equals. A balanced triangle. Rock, paper, scissors in human form. The anime tells us this constantly. Characters reference the Sannin as a unit. Their legendary status is treated as collective. When any one of them shows up, the reaction from other ninja is the same. These 3 are in a league of their own, and you don't want to fight any of them. The feats tell a completely different story. This is one of Powerscaling's most uncomfortable topics because it forces us to choose between what characters say and what characters do. Statements versus feats. And in Naruto, when those two conflict, the feats almost always win. Let's start with how the Sannin were originally presented. During the Second Shinobi World War, Hiruzen's 3 students fought Hanzo together and were the only survivors of their squad. Hanzo was so impressed that he let them live and gave them their title. This is the foundational moment of their legend: 3 ninja, working together, earning recognition as equals through a shared trial. The key word there is together. Nothing in that story suggests any individual Sannin could have soloed Hanzo. They survived as a unit. The title was granted to the group, not to 3 separate individuals who each independently proved themselves Hanzo's equal. This distinction matters because the series later treats them as individually comparable, which is a much stronger claim than these 3 work well together. Fast forward to Shippuden, and we get actual combat footage of each Sannin fighting serious opponents. This is where the triangle falls apart. Jiraiya's ceiling is simultaneously the clearest and most controversial to measure because his biggest fight ends in his death. Episodes 129 through 133 cover his infiltration of Amagakure and his battle against Pain, and it remains one of the most debated fights in the entire series. Here's what happens. Jiraiya enters Sage Mode with Fukasaku and Shima fused to his shoulders, giving him access to Senjutsu and collaborative techniques. He fights 3 of the 6 paths of pain, manages to kill them using Frog Genjutsu, and believes he's won. Then Pain reveals all 6 paths, resurrects the 3 Jiraiya killed, and the real fight begins. Jiraiya loses his left arm to the Asura Path's surprise attack and is eventually overwhelmed by the combined assault of all 6 bodies. He dies after using his final moments to encode a message about Pain's true nature. Pain himself states that if Jiraiya had known the secret of the 6 paths beforehand, he would have won. This statement is the foundation of the Jiraiya beats Pain with intel argument that dominates power scaling debates to this day. I think it's wrong, or at least it's incomplete in ways that matter. Pain's statement is made immediately after the fight, when he's reflecting on how close the battle was. It's genuine praise for Jiraiya's abilities. Pain acknowledges that Jiraiya figuring out the shared vision mechanic during combat was impressive, and that prior knowledge would have changed the outcome. Here's the problem. Knowing how Pain works and being able to exploit that knowledge are 2 different things. Jiraiya's Sage Mode has a critical weakness. He can't gather natural energy while fighting, so he needs Fukasaku and Shima on his shoulders to do it for him. This works great for extended battles, where he can maintain the mode indefinitely. It works terribly against an opponent with 6 bodies that can attack from multiple angles simultaneously. Even with full intel on the shared vision, Jiraiya would still be one person fighting 6 coordinated opponents who can see through each other's eyes. The genjutsu that killed 3 paths only worked because those paths were isolated. Against all 6 at once, with Jiraiya knowing he can't let any of them get a clear angle on him, the tactical challenge becomes nearly impossible. Naruto eventually beats Pain, but Naruto has advantages Jiraiya doesn't. Naruto's Sage Mode is complete. He doesn't need toads on his shoulders and can move freely. Naruto has shadow clones gathering natural energy for him off-site. Naruto has the 9 tails as an emergency backup. And even with all that, Naruto nearly loses multiple times and only wins after Pain has already exhausted himself fighting the entire village. The fairest reading is that Jiraiya was genuinely close to Pain's level. That intel would have helped significantly, but that victory was never guaranteed. Pain's praise is accurate without being a concession that Jiraiya would definitely win with different circumstances. Jiraiya's Sage Mode ceiling is therefore comparable to, but ultimately below, Pain. That's still incredibly impressive. Pain is arguably the strongest individual villain before Madara enters the picture, but it sets a concrete upper limit on what Jiraiya can accomplish. Now consider Orochimaru. Episodes 113 and 114 show Orochimaru fighting Naruto in his 4 tails form during the Tenchi Bridge arc. Naruto is completely out of control, consumed by the 9 tails chakra, and attacking everything in sight. Orochimaru toys with him. The Sannin is genuinely interested in testing Naruto's limits, provokes him further to draw out more power, and treats the fight as entertainment rather than a serious threat. This is despite Orochimaru being in a body that's rejecting him. His arms are still recovering from the 3rd Hokage's seal. He's explicitly not at full power, and he's still casually handling a version 2 Jinchuriki. Orochimaru's combat feats are consistently impressive throughout the series, but his real strength lies elsewhere. He cannot permanently die. The living corpse reincarnation technique lets Orochimaru transfer his consciousness into a new host body every few years. His cursed seals contain fragments of his consciousness that can be used to revive him even after apparent death. He survived being sealed by Itachi's Totsuka blade. He was revived from Anko's cursed seal during the 4th Shinobi World War. The man has more extra lives than a video game character. How do you power scale someone who can't stay dead? In a single fight, Orochimaru can absolutely be defeated. Itachi proved this. Sasuke proved this. The 3rd Hokage proved this. But defeating Orochimaru and eliminating Orochimaru as a threat are completely different propositions. You can win the battle and still lose the war, because he'll just come back in a few years with a new body and updated revenge plans. This makes Orochimaru's position in the Sannin Triangle weird. In raw combat power, he's probably the weakest of the 3 during Shippuden, because his body is constantly failing him. But in terms of overall threat level, he might be the most dangerous because he's functionally immortal and endlessly patient. Speaking of the Itachi fight, Orochimaru's fear of Itachi tells us something important about his self-assessment. When Orochimaru tried to take Itachi's body and failed, losing his hand in the process, he immediately left Akatsuki. He didn't plot revenge. He didn't scheme to catch Itachi off guard. He simply acknowledged that Itachi was beyond his ability to handle and moved on to softer targets. This is one of the few times we see Orochimaru show genuine fear of an opponent. He's not afraid of Jiraiya. He's not afraid of Tsunade. He's not particularly afraid of the third Hokage until the dead demon consuming seal comes out. But Itachi, Orochimaru wants nothing to do with him. If Orochimaru genuinely believed he and his fellow Sannin were roughly equal, and if he believed Itachi was only somewhat stronger than him, he might have tried again with better preparation. The fact that he permanently gave up suggests he understood the gap was insurmountable. This indirectly scales the other Sannin as well. If Orochimaru is below Itachi, and Orochimaru is roughly equal to Jiraiya and Tsunade, then all three Sannin are below Itachi. Given that Itachi lost to Sasuke, albeit while terminally ill and holding back, and pain is generally considered above Sasuke at that point in the story, the hierarchy becomes clearer. Then we have Tsunade. Tsunade's combat showings are complicated. Her medical ninjutsu and superhuman strength are genuinely impressive. Her creation rebirth technique grants functional immortality by healing any injury at the cost of shortening her lifespan. The strength of 100 seal gives her massive chakra reserves and allows her to heal others remotely through Katsuyu. But her actual fights tend to end poorly. Episodes 329 through 332 cover the 5 Kage versus Madara Uchiha, and it's frankly embarrassing. Madara treats all 5 Kage, including Tsunade, as entertainment. He creates 25 wood clones to fight them 5-on-1 each, just to make things fair. The Kage collectively fail to do meaningful damage. Tsunade is bisected by Madara and left for dead. Now, context matters here. This is Madara Uchiha, a character so overpowered that the author literally had to pull a different final boss out of nowhere because Madara was too strong to beat conventionally. Losing to Madara is not shameful. Everyone loses to Madara. The problem is that Tsunade doesn't have corresponding wins against comparable opponents. She beats a poisoned and surprised Orochimaru in Part 1. She survives Pain's assault on Konoha while falling into a coma from chakra exhaustion. Her feats are primarily defensive and medical rather than combat victories. The world's greatest medical ninja is not necessarily the world's greatest fighter. Tsunade's value lies in keeping others alive and fighting, not in direct combat. This is a completely valid ninja specialty, but it means she's not actually comparable to Jiraiya or Orochimaru in a straight fight. The original Sannin Triangle was probably accurate during the Second Shinobi World War. 3 young ninja with complementary skills who worked well together and achieved legendary status through collective effort. By Shippuden, that balance has completely collapsed. Jiraiya has Sage Mode and decades of combat experience. His ceiling is nearly killed Pain, which is genuinely impressive and clearly above what Tsunade or crippled Orochimaru could accomplish. Orochimaru has immortality hacks and endless scientific resources, but his body is constantly failing him, and he's explicitly afraid of opponents like Itachi, who the other Sannin might have challenged. Tsunade has the best defensive and medical capabilities of the 3, but her offensive showings are limited, and she consistently needs backup against serious threats. The triangle doesn't balance anymore because their growth trajectories diverged. Jiraiya trained with the Toads and achieved partial Sage Mode. Orochimaru pursued forbidden techniques that granted immortality at the cost of combat effectiveness. Tsunade abandoned active duty for decades and, while she retained her raw strength, didn't develop new techniques or push her combat ceiling. This happens to team dynamics in real life too. 3 college friends who start at similar levels will end up in completely different places 20 years later, depending on their choices and priorities. The Sannin are equals in terms of historical significance and reputation. They are not equals in terms of combat power by the time we actually see them fight. The series wants us to believe in the balanced triangle. The feats don't support it, and that's fine. It makes the characters more interesting. Jiraiya's death hits harder because he was genuinely the strongest of the 3 and still couldn't win. Orochimaru's immortality obsession makes more sense when you realize he needs it to compete. Tsunade's role as Hokage works better when her value is leadership and medical expertise rather than being the village's strongest fighter. The Sannin problem isn't really a problem at all. It's just the series doing something more complicated than These three are exactly equal, and the anime being too attached to the original framing to fully commit to what the story actually shows us. Pain's assault, the day power levels broke. Every power scaling system has a breaking point. A moment where the scale you've been using suddenly becomes inadequate because someone shows up and does something so far outside the established framework that you need to recalibrate everything. For Naruto, that moment is Pain's assault on Konoha. Episodes 152 through 175 contain the fight that fundamentally changes what strong means in this universe. Before Pain, we had a rough hierarchy. Kage at the top, then Elite Jonin, then Regular Jonin, then Chunin, then Genin. Simple, clean, useful for measuring characters against each other. After Pain, that hierarchy becomes a suggestion at best. Because Pain doesn't fit anywhere on it. Pain is 6 people and 0 people simultaneously. Pain can destroy an entire village with a single technique. Pain killed Jiraiya. Pain killed Kakashi. Pain would have killed Naruto if Naruto didn't have a literal god sealed inside him. The Pain arc is the moment Naruto's power scaling grew up. Let's start with understanding what Pain actually is, because this is where most scaling errors begin. Pain isn't one guy. Pain is 6 corpses animated by chakra receivers, each with a different ability set, all controlled remotely by Nagato from a hidden location outside the village. Fighting Pain means fighting 6 specialized opponents who share vision through their Rinnegan, coordinate perfectly, and can be repaired or replaced if destroyed. The 6 paths break down like this. The Diva path controls attractive and repulsive forces through Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tenin. The Asura path has mechanical body modifications for artillery and missile attacks. The human path can extract souls and read minds through physical contact. The animal path summons various creatures that also share the Rinnegan's linked vision. The Preta path absorbs any chakra-based technique. The Naraka path summons the King of Hell to interrogate people and repair damaged paths. Each individual path would be a serious threat on its own. The Deva path's gravity manipulation alone would make it one of the strongest fighters in the series. But Pain doesn't fight as individuals, he fights as a system. Attack the Diva path, and the Asura path shoots missiles at you from behind. Try to use ninjutsu, and the Preta path absorbs it. Get grabbed by the human path and your soul gets ripped out. Kill one path and the Naraka path brings it back. This is why scaling Pain is so difficult. When we say, Kakashi lost to Pain, which Pain? When we say Jiraiya almost beat Pain, under what conditions? The answer matters enormously for understanding what these fights actually tell us about relative power levels. Jiraiya's death, in episodes 129 through 133, establishes Pain's threat level. Jiraiya infiltrates Amagakure, enters Sage Mode, and fights the animal path alone initially. He's winning decisively. Then Pain reveals 2 more paths. Jiraiya adapts, uses Frog Genjutsu with Fukasaku and Shima, and manages to kill all 3 paths he's facing. Victory appears certain. Then the other 3 paths arrive. The Naraka path resurrects the 3 Jiraiya killed, and suddenly he's fighting all 6 at once. Jiraiya loses his arm to a surprise attack from the Asura path and is eventually overwhelmed and killed. What does this tell us? Jiraiya in Sage Mode can defeat multiple paths when he has room to maneuver and can isolate his opponents. Jiraiya cannot defeat all 6 paths working together, especially when he doesn't know about the resurrection ability. The gap between some of Pain and all of Pain is the difference between victory and death for one of the strongest ninja in the series. Pain's own statement that Jiraiya would have won with prior intel is frequently cited, and I address this in the Sannin section. Even with perfect information, Jiraiya's incomplete Sage Mode and the coordination advantage of 6 linked opponents make victory uncertain. But the statement does confirm that Jiraiya was in the conversation close enough that circumstances mattered. Kakashi's death is more straightforward and arguably more informative. In episodes 159 and 160, Kakashi engages the Diva path, backed up by the Asura path. He figures out the 5-second cooldown on Shinra Tensei. He lands solid hits. He's fighting intelligently and well. He still loses. Kakashi, at this point in the series, is unambiguously one of Konoha's strongest ninja. He has the Sharingan, the Mangekyo Sharingan with Kamui, decades of combat experience, and genius-level tactical ability. The fact that he couldn't handle 2 paths and was specifically killed by the Deva path alone after the Asura path was destroyed tells us that even individual paths are roughly Kakashi tier threats. This is the calibration moment. If Kakashi equals roughly one path, and there are 6 paths that work together seamlessly, then Pain, as a complete unit, is approximately 6 times more dangerous than one of Konoha's elite. That's not a precise multiplier, but it establishes scale. The destruction of Konoha crystallizes Pain's threat level in a way that's impossible to argue with. When the Diva Path floats into the sky and uses Shinra Tensei, the result is a crater where a village used to be. Every building destroyed, the landscape itself reshaped. Thousands would have died if Tsunade hadn't been channeling her chakra through Katsuyu to protect the villagers. This is the technique that makes Kage level meaningless as a descriptor. Is Pain Kage level? He destroyed a village run by a Kage with a single attack. Is he above Kage level? There's no established tier for can delete geography. The existing scale simply doesn't accommodate what we just witnessed. From a power scaling perspective, the village destroying Shinra Tensei becomes a benchmark. Any character you want to call Pain's equal or superior needs to either tank this attack or have an answer for it. The technique has a lengthy cooldown. Pain is dramatically weakened for several minutes afterward, but if you can't survive the initial blast, the cooldown doesn't matter to you. Naruto's arrival and subsequent fight with Pain in episodes 163 through 169 is the most information-dense battle in the series for power scaling purposes. Every exchange tells us something. Every technique has implications for relative strength. This fight is why debates about Naruto's power level can be so precise. We have extensive data. Naruto arrives in Sage mode, immediately demonstrates that he's operating on a completely different level than anyone else who fought Pain. He destroys the Asura path with a single Rasengan. He uses the Rasen Shuriken, a technique that cuts on a cellular level to take out the human path. He systematically dismantles the animal path's summons. He turns the Preta path into a frog statue by overloading it with natural energy. In rapid succession, Naruto defeats 5 of the 6 paths. The Deva path survives only because its Shinra Tensei cooldown from destroying the village finally ended, giving it access to its gravity manipulation again. This establishes Sage Mode Naruto as roughly Pain tier. He can beat individual paths easily and can fight the complete system to a standstill. The Deva path alone, at full power, is enough to challenge him, but one path is all that's left. The fight between Naruto and the Deva path goes back and forth. Pain kills Fukasaku, removing Naruto's ability to maintain Sage Mode indefinitely. Naruto uses Shadow Clones to extend his Sage Chakra. Pain uses Chibaku Tensei's smaller scale versions to control the battlefield. Eventually, Pain captures Naruto by pinning him to the ground with chakra receivers. This is where the fight's clean power scaling data gets complicated. Hinata's intervention and apparent death triggers Naruto's transformation into his 6-tailed form. The Nine-Tails takes over completely, and suddenly we're not watching Naruto fight Pain anymore, we're watching 2 forces of nature collide. The 6-tailed form nearly breaks free of Chibaku Tensei, forcing Pain to use more and more power to contain it. Naruto progresses to 8 tails before Minato's failsafe activates and pulls him back. So the question becomes, did Naruto actually beat Pain, or did the Nine-Tails bail him out? The answer is both, depending on what you're measuring. In terms of the Deva path fight specifically, Naruto was losing when Hinata intervened. Pain had him captured and was about to leave with him. Without the Nine-Tails eruption, Naruto loses that fight. But the Nine-Tails eruption isn't a separate event. It's a consequence of Naruto being pushed to his emotional breaking point. Pain triggered it by apparently killing Hinata, and while the Nine-Tails rampage happened, it didn't actually beat Pain. Chibaku Tensei contained even the 8-tailed form. What beat Pain was Naruto returning to consciousness, breaking free of the weakened technique, and landing a final Rasengan on the exhausted Deva path during its post-Chibaku Tensei vulnerability window. Naruto won with a combination of his own Sage Mode power, the Nine-Tails providing a distraction and forcing Pain to expend his trump card, and the tactical intelligence to exploit the cooldown period. It's a team victory between Naruto and his tenant, with Naruto landing the finishing blow. For power scaling purposes, this means Sage Mode Naruto is slightly below Pain at full coordination, roughly equal to the Deva path alone, and capable of defeating Pain when Pain is exhausted from using his most powerful techniques. The Nine-Tails pushes his absolute ceiling much higher, but isn't something Naruto can control or reliably access at this point. The confrontation with Nagato himself adds another layer. When Naruto tracks Nagato to his hidden location, We see the man behind Pain for the first time, an emaciated figure with black receivers embedded in his back, unable to walk, kept alive by machines and willpower. This is Nagato, not Pain. The distinction matters. Nagato can use all the Rinnegan abilities himself, but his body is broken. The 6 paths of Pain exist specifically because Nagato can't fight directly anymore. When he does use abilities personally, like the village-destroying Shinra Tensei or Chibaku Tensei, the strain is visible and severe. This creates an interesting scaling question. Is Pain actually stronger than Nagato? In terms of combat flexibility, yes. The 6 paths can be in multiple places, coordinate attacks, and take damage without hurting Nagato directly. But in terms of maximum output, Nagato channeling his power through himself might actually exceed what any individual path can do. The 4th Shinobi World War provides data here. Edo Tensei, Nagato, brought back with his body restored to fighting condition, is terrifyingly strong. He nearly captures both Naruto and Killer Bee simultaneously. He uses Chibaku Tensei casually, without the strain we saw during the Konoha assault. He absorbs Killer Bee's chakra cloak and adds it to his own power. Edo Nagato is arguably stronger than Pain because he has a functional body and doesn't need to distribute his abilities across 6 puppets. The 6 paths of Pain were a workaround for disability, not an upgrade. This retroactively makes Pain's assault even more impressive. Nagato destroyed Konoha, killed multiple elite ninja, and nearly captured Naruto while operating at a fraction of his potential. A healthy Nagato would have been even worse. The Pain arc recalibrates everything that comes after. When we evaluate later characters and power-ups, we ask, could they handle Pain? Could they survive village-destroying Shinra Tensei? Could they fight 6 coordinated opponents with shared vision? Naruto's various forms get measured against this benchmark. Killer Bee gets compared to Pain's level. The 5 Kage are implicitly scaled by asking whether any of them could have done what Sage Naruto did. Pain becomes the measuring stick for genuinely dangerous, in a way that previous villains weren't. Orochimaru was scary because of his immortality and scheming. Itachi was scary because of his hacks abilities and mystery. Pain was scary because he showed up and deleted a hidden village, and the only person who could stop him was the main character at his absolute current limit. The day power levels broke was also the day they became interesting. Simple hierarchies are easy but boring. The chaos of trying to scale a 6-body hive mind with gravity manipulation against a Sage Mode Jinchuriki with anger issues is complicated, but that complexity is what makes the discussions worth having. Pain didn't ruin power scaling. Pain proved that power scaling could handle complexity, and every interesting debate since has been building on the foundation this arc established. Itachi, dismantling the myth. No character in Naruto generates more heated power scaling debates than Itachi Uchiha. The fanbase has elevated him to near godlike status based on a combination of genuine accomplishments, character favoritism, and outright misremembering of what actually happened in the anime. Itachi Solo's Your Verse became a meme precisely because the discourse around him had become so detached from reality. Let's fix that. Let's look at what Itachi actually did, what his abilities actually accomplish, and where he genuinely sits in the power hierarchy. The answer is still incredibly strong, but the specifics matter. First, the credentials that are undeniably real. Itachi graduated from the academy at age 7, became a Chunin at 10, joined Anbu at 11, and became an Anbu captain by 13. This progression is absurd by any standard. Most ninja take years to advance through ranks, and many never make Chunin at all. Itachi did it as a child, while also being trusted with the most sensitive missions the village had to offer. His intelligence scored second highest in the history of the Chunin exams, behind only Minato Namikaze. He slaughtered his entire clan in a single night. Regardless of how you feel about the moral implications, this is an incredible feat of combat endurance. The Uchiha were one of Konoha's most powerful clans, and Itachi killed them all, with Obito's assistance on the police force, without being stopped or even significantly delayed. Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, a candidate for 4th Hokage, a man who could fight Jiraiya and Tsunade to a standstill, tried to take Itachi's body and failed so completely that he immediately left Akatsuki. Orochimaru isn't someone who admits defeat easily. The fact that he didn't scheme for revenge, didn't try to catch Itachi off guard later, suggests the gap was overwhelming enough that Orochimaru considered it unbridgeable. These are real accomplishments. They establish Itachi as a genuine elite, someone operating at or near the top of the shinobi hierarchy. Where things go wrong is when fans extrapolate from these accomplishments to claims the anime doesn't support. Let's talk about the illness. Itachi had a terminal illness throughout Part 2. We don't know exactly what it was, but we know he was taking medicine to survive and that his condition was deteriorating. The question power scalers ask is, how much stronger would healthy Itachi be? The honest answer is, we don't know, and anyone who claims certainty is speculating. What we can observe is that even sick Itachi was still extremely dangerous. He casually handled Kakashi with Tsukuyomi in Part 1. He held his own against Sasuke for an extended fight in episodes 135 through 138. He contributed meaningfully against Kabuto alongside Sasuke in episodes 298 and 299. His illness affected his stamina more than his raw power. He could still use his Mangekyo techniques, but each use drained him more than it would drain a healthy Uchiha. The ceiling for healthy Itachi is bounded by what we know about other characters. He's not suddenly stronger than Pain or Madara just because he was sick when fighting. Removing his illness gives him better stamina and fewer combat limitations, but it doesn't give him new abilities or fundamentally change his matchups against top-tier opponents. The Sasuke fight in episodes 135 through 138 is where most Itachi scaling goes wrong. Here's what actually happened. Itachi let Sasuke win. He was dying anyway, wanted to pass on his Amaterasu to protect Sasuke from Obito, and needed to draw out and seal Orochimaru from Sasuke's cursed seal. The entire fight was choreographed by Itachi to achieve specific goals that had nothing to do with demonstrating his maximum combat power. When Itachi pokes Sasuke's forehead at the end, that's not him being too weak to take Sasuke's eyes. That was never his actual goal. He was planting the Amaterasu trigger while performing his trademark gesture of affection. Itachi died with a smile because everything went according to his plan. So what does this fight prove about scaling? Almost nothing useful about Itachi's peak capabilities. We can observe that Itachi's Susanoo could block Kirin, an attack that literally used natural lightning and destroyed the Uchiha hideout. That's a legitimate defensive feat. We can observe that his Totsuka blade sealed Orochimaru's 8 branches form, another legitimate feat. But we cannot conclude that this fight represents Itachi going all out, because he explicitly wasn't. The Totsuka blade and Yata mirror deserve their own examination. The Totsuka blade is a variant of the Sword of Kusanagi, an ethereal weapon that seals anyone it pierces into an eternal dream state. Orochimaru spent years searching for it and never found it. Zetsu describes Itachi's Susanoo with both weapons as invincible. Fans take this at face value and conclude Itachi has automatic win equipment. This is sloppy reasoning. First, invincible in context means extremely hard to defeat through direct combat. It doesn't mean cannot lose under any circumstances. Susanoo has limitations. It drains chakra rapidly, especially for someone without eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Against Sasuke, Itachi's Susanoo was visibly degrading before the fight ended. A prolonged battle against multiple opponents, or someone who can avoid engaging directly, would still give Itachi problems. Second, the Totsuka blade has to actually hit someone. It's not instant, it's not undodgeable, and it requires Itachi to be using Susanoo. Against speed-specialized opponents like the Raikage or Minato, landing the hit becomes the problem, not the seal effect. Against opponents with their own Susanoo or equivalent defensive abilities, the blade may not penetrate. Third, the Yata mirror reflects any attack by changing its chakra nature to counterbalance. This is powerful defensive technology, but it's a shield, not an omnidirectional barrier. Attacks from angles the mirror isn't covering can still connect. Multi-directional assaults, or techniques that ignore conventional chakra nature interactions, like truth-seeking balls, may bypass it entirely. These weapons make Itachi's Susanoo exceptionally strong. They do not make him unbeatable. The distinction matters for accurate scaling. Itachi's partnership with Kisame tells us something important about how the series ranks him. Kisame is a monster, called the tailed beast without a tail. Due to his enormous chakra reserves, he was strong enough to push Guy into opening 7 gates. He successfully captured the Four Tails Jinchuriki without taking damage. He's not a weak partner assigned to babysit Itachi, he's a genuine peer. Their dynamic, however, consistently shows Itachi as the decision-maker. When they encounter Jiraiya in Part 1, it's Itachi who decides to retreat. When they confront Kakashi, Itachi handles the fight while Kisame waits. The partnership isn't one-sided, but there's a clear hierarchy with Itachi in the lead position. Kisame himself acknowledges Itachi as stronger. After Itachi's death, Kisame reflects on their partnership with genuine respect, suggesting he viewed Itachi as a friend and ally rather than just a teammate. This isn't the attitude of someone who thought he was carrying his partner. The anime presents Itachi and Kisame as the premium Akatsuki duo, two S-rank criminals who together were a legitimate threat to almost anyone. Itachi was the stronger half, but not by a margin that made Kisame irrelevant. The Jiraiya encounter in episode 8-5 part 1 generates endless debate. When Itachi and Kisame encounter Jiraiya protecting Naruto, Itachi orders a retreat. His stated reasoning is that fighting Jiraiya would result in mutual destruction or potentially their deaths. Kisame comments that he thought Itachi might be able to take Jiraiya one-on-one. Fans interpret this two ways. Either Itachi was being honest about the danger, or he was lying to avoid a fight he didn't want to have since his actual mission was to show Akatsuki that Konoha's Jinchuriki was being protected, not to capture Naruto. Both interpretations have merit. The Itachi was lying camp points out that Itachi was a double agent trying to protect Konoha. Fighting Jiraiya to the death would have harmed the village regardless of outcome. Itachi had every motivation to find reasons not to fight. The Itachi was honest camp points out that Jiraiya is a Sannin with Sage Mode access. Even if Itachi could win, the fight would be brutal and potentially mutual. Against a Sage Mode Jiraiya with full knowledge of Itachi's abilities, victory is far from guaranteed. The most reasonable reading is that both are partially true. Itachi probably could beat Jiraiya under favorable circumstances, but the fight would be difficult, draining, and would compromise his cover as a loyal Akatsuki member. Retreating served his actual goals while also avoiding a genuinely dangerous opponent. This encounter tells us Itachi considers Jiraiya a serious threat, not someone he dismisses casually. That's meaningful scaling data. Jiraiya is pain tier adjacent, and Itachi treats him accordingly. Edo Tensei Itachi in episodes 298 and 299 shows us something closer to healthy Itachi: unlimited chakra, no illness, full access to his abilities. This is often used to argue that healthy Itachi would be dramatically stronger than what we saw in his lifetime. The irony is that Edo Tensei is actually nerfed in some ways. Reincarnated ninja have their personality suppressed by the summoner's control. They don't have access to their tactical creativity or strategic thinking unless specifically freed from control. Itachi circumvents this through the crow he planted in Naruto, which triggers Kotoa Matsukami and overrides Kabuto's commands. But this is a special case, not something available to Edo ninja in general. More importantly, Edo Itachi's feats against Kabuto are impressive, but not dramatically beyond what living Itachi demonstrated. He uses Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, Susanoo, and ultimately Izanami. These are all techniques living Itachi also used. The main advantage is that he can spam them without worrying about chakra exhaustion or blindness progression. Against Kabuto specifically, Itachi needed Sasuke's help and still had to resort to Izanami, a technique that costs him one of his eyes. This is not Itachi easily solos everyone territory. This is Itachi working hard alongside his brother to defeat a single opponent who prepared specifically to counter Genjutsu. The Kabuto fight shows Itachi as resourceful, intelligent, and powerful. It does not show him as unbeatable or even as clearly superior to Kabuto in raw power. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the Itachi solos your verse meme. This originated from forum debates, where Itachi fans would argue he could defeat characters from other anime series or defeat multiple powerful Naruto characters simultaneously. The claims became increasingly absurd. Itachi could beat Madara, Itachi could beat Pain, Itachi with prep time beats literally anyone. The meme became popular precisely because these claims are ridiculous when examined against actual anime evidence. Itachi cannot beat Madara. Madara, at his weakest, blind, elderly, still had Hashirama's cells and decades of accumulated power. War Arc Madara is literally unkillable through conventional means. There is no version of this matchup where Itachi wins. Itachi probably cannot beat Pain. 6 coordinated opponents with shared vision, multiple hacks abilities including soul removal and gravity manipulation, and enough power that even Jiraiya, who Itachi respects, lost. Itachi's Susanoo might let him survive longer than most, but Pain has answers for defensive play. Itachi struggles against Obito. Kamui is a hard counter to most of what Itachi does. Physical attacks phase through, and the Totsuka blade is still a physical attack. Itachi would need to catch Obito with Genjutsu before Obito realizes the threat, which is possible but not reliable. What Itachi can do is defeat most shinobi below the absolute top tier. He's a reasonable matchup against the 5 KJ, except maybe Prime Hashirama. He could probably handle most Akatsuki members in one-on-one fights. He's a genuine elite who earned his reputation through real accomplishments. The myth doesn't serve Itachi's character. It cheapens what makes him actually interesting. Itachi's tragedy is that he sacrificed everything for the village and his brother, including his reputation and ultimately his life. His power was sufficient to accomplish terrible things and protect what he loved, but it wasn't infinite. He made hard choices because he had limitations, not despite having none. A truly invincible Itachi would have found another way. He would have killed Danzo and the elders who ordered the massacre. He would have exposed the conspiracy and protected his clan through force. The story works precisely because Itachi wasn't strong enough to do everything himself. He had to choose between impossible options. When fans inflate Itachi to god tier, they undermine the narrative weight of his choices. If he could beat anyone, why did he accept such a terrible mission? If his Susanoo was truly invincible, why did he need Obito's help with the massacre? The answer is that he couldn't, and he did. Itachi was extremely powerful, but still bound by the same limitations as everyone else in the series. He's not outside the power system, he's near the top of it, which is impressive enough without fabrication. Here's where Itachi actually sits. Below Pain, below Madara, below Obito, roughly equal to or slightly above healthy Jiraiya, definitively above most non-legendary ninja. He's a top 15 character in this series, maybe top 10, depending on how you count the god-tier characters who appear in the war arc. That's still incredible. That's still a character worth respecting and discussing. It's just not solos your verse. The discourse serves no one. Itachi fans look foolish when they make indefensible claims. Critics overcorrect by underrating his genuine accomplishments. The actual character gets lost in the noise. Itachi Uchiha was a prodigy who became a legend, a man who chose darkness to protect the light, and a fighter capable of defeating almost anyone in his world. That's enough. It was always enough. The myth just made it harder to see the reality. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. The Uchiha Privilege, Why Sharingan Breaks Everything. There's an uncomfortable truth at the heart of Naruto power scaling that nobody likes to discuss openly. The Uchiha are simply better than everyone else. The series presents themes of hard work versus natural talent, shows characters like Rock Lee and Naruto overcoming the odds through determination and training, then quietly demonstrates that none of that matters if your last name is Uchiha. The Sharingan is the most broken ability in the series, and every meaningful upgrade to it makes it more broken. By the time we reach the war arc, the final battle is essentially Uchiha versus Uchiha, with some friends helping on the sidelines. Understanding why requires examining what the Sharingan actually does and how its evolutions compound the advantage. Base Sharingan provides 3 distinct advantages that would each be broken on their own. First, the Eye of Insight grants perfect perception. Users can read lips, track fast-moving objects, see chakra flow, and most importantly, predict an opponent's movements by reading subtle muscle tension before they act. This is effectively combat precognition. The user knows what you're going to do before you finish doing it. Against anyone without similar perception abilities, Sharingan users fight with a significant information advantage. Second, the copying ability lets Sharingan users learn almost any technique by watching it performed once. Kakashi earned his Copy Ninja nickname by allegedly learning over 1,000 jutsu this way. The only limitations are techniques requiring Kekkei Genkai the user doesn't possess, or nature transformations they haven't trained. Everything else is fair game. Spend years developing a unique fighting style? A Sharingan user watches one fight and can replicate your signature moves. Third, the Eye of Hypnotism enables Genjutsu casting through eye contact alone. At its simplest, this allows suggestion and coercion. At its peak, Uchiha can control tailed beasts, creatures of pure chakra that are functionally forces of nature. Madara controlling the Nine Tails and using it to attack Konoha wasn't a unique feat. It was his birthright as an Uchiha with sufficient skill. Any one of these abilities would make Uchiha clan members formidable. Together, they create a baseline advantage that most ninja cannot overcome regardless of training or determination. Then there's the Mangekyo Sharingan, which is where things get genuinely absurd. The Mangekyo awakens through emotional trauma, typically witnessing or causing the death of someone close. This gives each user a unique set of additional abilities specific to their eyes. The variation between users creates wildly different power levels and utility, despite nominally having the same upgrade. Itachi's Mangekyo grants Amaterasu, black flames that burn anything and cannot be extinguished, and Tsukuyomi a genjutsu that traps victims in an illusory world where the user controls time perception. Victims of Tsukuyomi experience what feels like days of torture in mere seconds of real time. Kakashi and Sasuke were both hospitalized for extended periods after being subjected to it. Obito's Mangekyo grants Kamui, which is arguably the single most broken ability in the series. Kamui allows the user to phase through all physical attacks by partially sending their body to another dimension. It also enables teleportation and dimensional travel. Against Kamui, conventional attacks simply don't work. Punches, swords, and even most ninjutsu pass harmlessly through. The only reliable counters are speed overwhelming the phasing activation, attacks that affect both dimensions simultaneously, or tricking Obito into becoming solid at the wrong moment. Shisui's Mangekyo grants Kodo Amatsukami, a genjutsu so subtle that victims don't realize they're under its influence. It can completely rewrite a person's beliefs and loyalties without them knowing anything changed. Danzo considered this ability so valuable that he stole Shisui's eye and kept it for emergencies. The only limitation is its long cooldown period between uses. Sasuke's Mangekyo shares Amaterasu with Itachi, due to Itachi implanting it before death, and adds Kagutsuchi, the ability to shape and control Amaterasu flames. Where Itachi could only project the flames, Sasuke can manipulate them into defensive barriers or weapons. The variation between these abilities means that Mangekyo Sharingan isn't a single power level, it's a category containing vastly different toolkits. Kamui is a defensive ability that makes its user nearly invincible against physical attacks. Kodo Amatsukami is an offensive ability that wins fights before they start by controlling the opponent's mind. Amaterasu is a destructive ability that creates damage nothing can heal from. Comparing Mangekyo users requires understanding what their specific abilities do. Not just that they have Mangekyo. The Mangekyo has one significant drawback. Overuse causes progressive blindness. Each use strains the eyes, and eventually the user loses their sight entirely. This is the series' attempt to balance the power, creating a resource management component to Mangekyo usage. The Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan removes this limitation entirely. By transplanting another Mangekyo from a close relative, typically a sibling, the user gains eternal eyes that never degrade. Madara achieved this by taking his dying brother Izuna's eyes. Sasuke achieved it by receiving Itachi's eyes after Itachi's death. The Eternal Mangekyo retains all abilities of both original eyes while eliminating the blindness progression. This transforms Mangekyo users from glass cannons, who must conserve their abilities, into sustained combatants who can spam their most powerful techniques without consequence. Sasuke's Amaterasu usage increases dramatically after receiving Itachi's eyes, because he no longer pays a price for using it. The Eternal Mangekyo also unlocks the complete Susanoo, a massive chakra construct that functions as both armor and weapon. At full manifestation, Susanoo is roughly the size of a tailed beast and can fight them directly. Madara's Susanoo could cut through mountains. Sasuke's Susanoo becomes one of his primary combat tools for the rest of the series. Then there's the Rinnegan, which is theoretically the Sharingan's final evolution. The Rinnegan awakens when someone possessing Indra's chakra, the Uchiha ancestor, combines it with Ashura's chakra, the Senju, Uzumaki ancestor. Madara achieved this by stealing Hashirama's cells and waiting decades for the combination to produce results. Sasuke received his Rinnegan directly from Hagoromo, the Sage of Six Paths, during the War Arc. Rinnegan abilities include control over attractive and repulsive forces, the ability to summon and control multiple bodies simultaneously, chakra absorption, soul manipulation, access to all nature transformations, and the ability to summon the Gedo statue, the Husk of the Ten Tails. Pain's Six Paths technique that destroyed Konoha was Rinnegan-based. Madara's Limbo clones that exist in a parallel dimension are Rinnegan-based. Sasuke's dimensional teleportation is Rinnegan-based. The Rinnegan represents the ceiling of ocular power in the series, and it's exclusively available to those with Sharingan heritage. Non-Uchiha cannot naturally awaken it. The path to godhood runs through Uchiha genetics. By the end of the series, consider what Sasuke's combat options actually include: base Sharingan perception and copying abilities, Mangekyo-level Amaterasu and Kagutsuchi for fire manipulation, complete Susanoo for defense and large-scale combat, Rinnegan gravity manipulation, chakra absorption, and dimensional abilities. All 5 basic nature transformations. Conventional ninjutsu, taijutsu, and kenjutsu skills honed over years of training. Compare this to Naruto's endgame toolkit: 6 paths, Sage Mode for sensory abilities and truth-seeking balls, massive chakra reserves from the 9 tails, Shadow Clone army capability, Rasen Shuriken and its variants, Kurama Avatar for large-scale combat. Naruto's kit is powerful, but it's narrower. He does a few things at overwhelming scale. Sasuke does many things at high competence across multiple domains. In a straight fight, they're roughly equal. Their final battle ends in mutual defeat. But Sasuke has more options, more answers to unusual situations, more flexibility in how he approaches problems. This pattern repeats throughout the series. At the top tier, almost everyone is either an Uchiha or has abilities specifically designed to counter Uchiha. Naruto has Kurama. Hashirama had wood release that could suppress tailed beasts. The Sage of 6 Paths distributed power specifically to create balance against the Uchiha line. The series is functionally Uchiha and friends at the highest levels of power. The final villain is Kaguya, the ancestor of all Uchiha and everyone else, but the Sharingan specifically comes from her. The war arc's primary antagonists are Obito and Madara, both Uchiha. The solution to defeating them involves empowering Sasuke, an Uchiha, with even more Uchiha power. Non-Uchiha characters who remain relevant at the top tier almost universally have something that compensates for not having the Sharingan. Guy has the 8 Gates, a technique that sacrifices his body to achieve temporary godlike power. Naruto has Kurama and 6 Paths Chakra. The Hokage have various unique abilities: wood release for Hashirama, flying thunder god for Minato, that provide specific advantages. But these are exceptions. Individual ninja who found ways to compete despite lacking the Sharingan. The Uchiha don't need to find workarounds. Their baseline genetic inheritance provides advantages that others spend lifetimes trying to match. Power scaling in Naruto means accepting this imbalance. When evaluating matchups, Sharingan access is often the deciding factor. Can the non-Uchiha overcome the perception advantage? Can they avoid Genjutsu cast through eye contact? Can they prevent their techniques from being copied and used against them? Sometimes the answer is yes. Guy overwhelmed Madara through pure physical output that the Sharingan could perceive but not help against. Naruto's Sage Mode provides comparable perception abilities. Specific counters exist for specific Uchiha abilities, but these counters require specific circumstances, specific abilities, specific preparation. The Sharingan user has advantages that apply universally against almost all opponents. That's the privilege, the inherited advantage that makes every fight easier, regardless of the specific opponent. The Uchiha were a dynasty of natural-born weapons in a world where everyone else had to work for their power. The Sharingan is why, and it breaks everything the series tries to tell us about hard work and determination. Minato versus Tobirama, settling the speed debate. The Naruto fandom has been arguing about this matchup for over a decade, and they'll probably keep arguing about it until the heat death of the universe. 2 Hokage, both famous for being the fastest ninja of their respective eras, both users of the same signature technique. Tobirama invented the Flying Thunder God. Minato perfected it. They fight during the war arc. The creator openly admits the student surpassed him. Debate settled, right? If you've spent more than 5 minutes in any Naruto power scaling discussion, you know it's never that simple. The core confusion starts with a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Flying Thunder God technique actually is. Fans describe both Minato and Tobirama as fast because they use this technique, but the Flying Thunder God has nothing to do with speed. It's instant teleportation. The user marks a location or object with a special seal, and they can instantaneously transport themselves and others to that marked point. You're here, then you're there. This distinction matters enormously for power scaling purposes. When people ask, who's faster, Minato or Tobirama, they're conflating 2 completely different questions. Who has better reaction time and natural movement speed? And who uses the Flying Thunder God more effectively? These are separate skills that happen to produce similar visual results. Tobirama created the technique during the Warring States period. He used it primarily as an ambush tool, mark enemies, teleport behind them, kill them before they realize what happened. His signature battle strategy involved impure world reincarnation zombies carrying mutually multiplying explosive tags, with Tobirama teleporting the resulting explosions wherever he needed them. Efficient, brutal, not particularly concerned with looking cool. Very Tobirama. Minato took the same technique and transformed it into something else entirely. Rather than using it for ambushes, Minato integrated Flying Thunder God into his moment-to-moment combat style. He scattered marked kunai across battlefields before fights even started, creating a web of teleportation points he could bounce between during active combat. Where Tobirama used the technique to end fights before they began, Minato used it to be everywhere at once during fights that were already happening. The difference in application explains why Minato earned the Yellow Flash moniker, while Tobirama was remembered more for his water ninjutsu. Both used the same technique. Minato used it more visibly and more frequently. The Minato vs. Obito fight from the Ninetales attack represents the single most impressive display of combat speed in the entire series. Understanding why requires understanding what Minato was actually dealing with. Obito's Kamui allows him to phase through physical attacks by partially shifting his body to another dimension. The only moment he's vulnerable is the split second when he attacks. He has to become solid to touch his opponent. Minato figures this out mid-fight, then executes a strategy that requires him to move faster than Obito can react during that vulnerability window. Here's the sequence. Minato throws a marked kunai at Obito. Obito lets it phase through him. Minato charges at Obito with a Rasengan. Obito reaches for Minato, becoming solid. In the instant before Obito touches him, Minato teleports to the kunai that's now behind Obito and slams the Rasengan into his back. Then, before Obito can phase again, Minato applies both the Flying Thunder God seal and a contract seal that breaks Obito's control over the Ninetales. The entire exchange takes maybe 2 seconds. Minato identified a vulnerability window, created a trap that would exploit it, executed the trap perfectly, and accomplished 2 separate objectives in the time it takes most people to finish a sentence. This is the fight that cemented his legend, and honestly, it deserves the reputation. When the 4 Hokage are reincarnated during the war arc, the series finally gives us direct comparison. Tobirama openly acknowledges Minato's superiority with the Flying Thunder God. The exact context: Minato arrives at the battlefield first, having teleported faster than the other Hokage could travel. Tobirama, upon arriving, remarks that Minato is faster than him. Later, when they're coordinating attacks on Obito, Tobirama explicitly states that Minato's teleportation speed exceeds his own. This should settle the debate. The creator of the technique, observing the other user directly, admits the other user is better. What more do you want? The counter-argument focuses on base speed, natural movement, and reaction time without the Flying Thunder God. During his lifetime, Tobirama was explicitly described as the fastest shinobi alive. He outpaced Izuna Uchiha, who had fully developed Sharingan precognition, enough to land killing blows. He served as the strategic leader of the Senju clan during their war against the Uchiha, consistently proving faster than Sharingan users who could theoretically see his attacks coming. Minato's base speed feats are harder to isolate because he almost never fights without using the Flying Thunder God. The Obito fight, his most impressive showing, relies entirely on teleportation. His third Shinobi World War legend comes from being faster than anyone could track, but again, he was using the marked kunai. Separating Minato's natural speed from his technique usage is nearly impossible because he integrated them so thoroughly. There's an argument that Tobirama might actually be faster in pure foot speed, with Minato surpassing him specifically in Flying Thunder God application. The war arc supports this reading when Tobirama tags Obito with explosive tags. While Obito is becoming the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, he moves so quickly that even the other reincarnated Hokage struggle to track him. This suggests his base movement speed remained formidable even by war arc standards. But base speed matters less than you'd think in practical terms. Neither of these characters would ever fight without their full toolkit. Asking who's faster without the Flying Thunder God is like asking who's stronger without chakra, technically answerable, but irrelevant to any actual combat scenario. KCM Minato with the Ninetales chakra mode complicates things further. After being reincarnated, Minato reveals he sealed the yin half of Kurama into himself before dying. When he accesses this power during the war arc, his capabilities increase dramatically. His chakra cloak provides additional speed enhancement on top of his already ridiculous teleportation, and he gains access to tailed beast transformations. The question becomes whether KCM Minato represents Minato's true power level or an asterisk case. He only had this power for a few hours before dying, never used it in life, and immediately accessed it without the training Naruto required. The cooperative relationship with Kurama that normally takes years to develop happened instantly because Kurama respected Minato and wanted to help fight Obito. For scaling purposes, most analyses treat base Minato teleportation, Rasengan sealing techniques, as his standard level and KCM Minato as a what-if scenario. It would be like scaling Naruto based on Baryon mode, technically accurate to his maximum output, but not representative of how he normally fights. So where does this leave the debate? Flying Thunder God. Minato wins decisively. Tobirama created it, Minato mastered it. The creator admits this directly. No ambiguity. Base speed. Probably Tobirama, though the evidence is less clear. His feats against Sharingan users during the Warring States era and his continued performance in the War arc suggest exceptional natural speed. Minato's base speed is harder to evaluate because he never shows it in isolation. Overall combat speed, Minato. The technique matters more than the attribute, and Minato uses the technique better. Combat effectiveness. Closer than the speed debate suggests. Tobirama's tactical intelligence, water ninjutsu, and willingness to use kinjutsu like impure world reincarnation make him a more versatile fighter than his reputation as Flying Thunder God prototype implies. In a direct fight, Minato's superior teleportation would give him significant advantages, but Tobirama's sensor abilities and strategic mind would prevent the fight from being one-sided. The debate persists because fans conflate different types of speed, because Tobirama has defenders who feel he's underrated relative to his student, and because both characters have legitimate claims to elite status. Minato is faster in the way that matters most. Tobirama is faster in ways that matter less, but still matter. Neither interpretation is completely wrong, which means the argument will never actually end. Some things are simply too fun to stop arguing about. Ranking the Hokage all 7 by combat power. Every Naruto fan has a Hokage ranking. Most of them are wrong, not because the fans are stupid, but because the series actively misleads viewers with titles and reputation that don't match actual feats. God of Shinobi gets thrown around for characters who never demonstrate god-tier abilities. Strongest Kage gets assigned to people we barely see fight. Today we're ignoring titles, ignoring hype, and ranking every Hokage strictly by what they actually do on screen. This is going to make some people angry. Good. Kakashi Hatake, as 6th Hokage, is the weakest Hokage by a significant margin, and this isn't disrespectful, it's just math. The Kakashi, who became Hokage, lost the Sharingan when Obito died. The defining characteristics of Kakashi of the Sharingan vanished the moment his friend's spirit departed. What remained was still impressive by normal ninja standards. Kakashi retained his library of copied jutsu. He couldn't learn new ones, but decades of collecting techniques gave him versatility most shinobi never achieve. He developed Purple Lightning to replace Chidori, since Chidori required the Sharingan to use safely at combat speed. His tactical intelligence remained elite, his experience unmatched among living ninja, but elite by normal standards doesn't compete at Hokage level. Kakashi has no bloodline limit. He's a regular human who trained extremely hard, and at this tier, that's simply not enough. War Arc Kakashi with dual Mangekyo Sharingan and perfect Susanoo is a completely different character. That temporary power-up from Obito's departing spirit let him damage Kaguya Otsutsuki. But it lasted maybe 20 minutes of in-universe time, and came from a dying gift, not Kakashi's own development. Ranking 6th Hokage Kakashi by that temporary state would be like ranking Naruto exclusively by Baryon mode, technically his maximum output, but not representative of his actual capabilities during his tenure. Base Kakashi loses to every other Hokage in direct combat. He knows this. The village knew this. They made him Hokage anyway, because the position requires more than punching power. And Kakashi led Konoha through post-war reconstruction with the steady hand the village needed. Tsunade Senju is nearly impossible to kill, and that's simultaneously her greatest strength and the limitation on her ranking. She can survive fights she can't win. Against other Hokage, survival without victory is just delayed defeat. Her offensive power is genuinely terrifying when it connects. Perfect chakra control concentrated into impact points means her punches crack the earth and shatter anything they touch. She taught this technique to Sakura, who replicated the results, confirming it's learnable rather than some hidden bloodline ability. The strength of 100 seal on her forehead stores chakra continuously over years, and when released, it fuels creation rebirth, a forbidden technique that regenerates any injury in real time. Madara Uchiha bisected her completely during the war arc. She survived and kept fighting. That's the level of durability we're discussing. The problem is that durability doesn't translate to victory against opponents she can't touch. Tsunade has no ranged options worth mentioning. She needs to close distance to fight effectively, and every Hokage above her has reliable methods to prevent that. Minato teleports away before she can swing. Tobirama does the same while counterattacking from angles she can't predict. Hashirama creates forests between them and attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Her regeneration means she'd survive longer than Kakashi would, but the outcome remains the same. Tsunade's real value was never direct combat against peer-level opponents. She revolutionized medical ninjutsu, trained the next generation of combat medics, and kept other powerful ninja alive to fight battles she couldn't win herself. The fifth Hokage's legacy is the lives she saved, not the enemies she defeated. Hiruzen Sarutobi presents the most frustrating evaluation problem in Hokage power scaling because his reputation massively exceeds his demonstrated abilities. The series calls him God of Shinobi and claims he was the strongest Kage of his era. Then it shows us an elderly man struggling against Orochimaru and two nerfed Edo Tensei zombies. The charitable interpretation is that Prime Hiruzen was genuinely that powerful, and age simply reduced him that dramatically. He mastered all 5 chakra natures. He knew techniques from every clan in Konoha. His summon Enma provided both an indestructible weapon and an independent combat partner. The data books claim he surpassed both his teachers Hashirama and Tobirama Senju, which would place Prime Hiruzen above everyone except possibly Naruto. The problem is that none of this appears on screen. Every Hiruzen fight we witness shows a man well past his peak, and extrapolating backward from those performances requires assumptions the anime never confirms. Old Hiruzen fighting Orochimaru plus heavily restricted Edo Tensei versions of the first and second Hokage is genuinely impressive, but those Edo Tensei weren't remotely at full power. Orochimaru himself notes his reanimation technique was imperfect. We're watching Hiruzen struggle against shadows of shadows. The God of Shinobi title, appearing for both Hiruzen and Hashirama, creates additional confusion. Context suggests Hiruzen earned the title during his era, while Hashirama earned it during his, but the series never clarifies whether they're meant to be comparable. Based purely on demonstrated feats, they're not even close. Hashirama reshaped landscapes and defeated Madara plus the Nine Tails simultaneously. Hiruzen died sealing Orochimaru's arms. Ranking Hiruzen requires choosing between reputation and evidence. Evidence wins. Prime Hiruzen might have been stronger than this placement suggests, but might have been doesn't count for power scaling purposes. Tobirama Senju invented the techniques that define high-level shinobi combat, then got overshadowed by people who used his inventions better than he did. This is deeply unfair to him, but power scaling doesn't care about fairness. The Flying Thunder God technique made Tobirama one of the fastest shinobi in history during his lifetime. He created shadow clones, giving ninja the ability to be multiple places simultaneously. He developed Edo Tensei, which is arguably the most broken technique in the entire series when used properly. His water release generated massive volumes from nothing, letting him fight effectively in any environment. The man was a genius who reshaped what ninja could do. His actual combat showings are solid but not spectacular by top-tier standards. He killed Izuna Uchiha, Madara's brother and equal, which establishes him as genuinely elite. He survived an ambush by the Gold and Silver brothers long enough to serve as a decoy for his students' escape. During the War Arc reanimation, he demonstrated speed sufficient to tag Jubito with explosive seals before anyone else could react. The limitation is output. Tobirama's techniques are precise and efficient rather than overwhelming. He can outmaneuver most opponents, but against characters with massive area of effect, abilities or regeneration that outlasts his chakra reserves, precision becomes a disadvantage. He invented Edo Tensei, but explicitly didn't use it to its full potential, recognizing the ethical problems his own technique created. Tobirama sits in the frustrating middle ground of being too skilled to rank low, but lacking the raw power to compete with the top tier. He'd beat Hiruzen, Tsunade, and Kakashi reliably. He'd lose to Hashirama, Minato, and Naruto just as reliably. The inventor of broken techniques was, himself, surprisingly balanced. Minato Namikaze was undefeated for his entire ninja career, and that record means more than it might seem. He wasn't undefeated because he avoided dangerous opponents. He was undefeated because dangerous opponents couldn't touch him. The Flying Thunder God in Minato's hands became something different than what Tobirama used. Where Tobirama employed it for ambushes and tactical repositioning, Minato integrated it into continuous combat, scattering marked kunai across battlefields and bouncing between them faster than opponents could track. His speed advantage wasn't about raw foot movement. It was about being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The moment you committed to attacking his position, he was already behind you. His fight against Obito during the Ninetales attack remains the single most impressive, pure speed combat sequence in the series. Obito's Kamui makes him intangible to all physical attacks except during the split second he attacks someone else. Minato figured out this limitation mid-fight, created a trap, exploiting it, and executed that trap in the time between Obito becoming solid and Obito touching him. He then marked Obito with the Flying Thunder God seal, applied the Contract seal, breaking Obito's control of the Ninetales, and teleported the resulting tailed beast bomb away from Konoha. All of this happened in minutes while his wife was dying, and his newborn son needed protection. The Rasengan, his other signature technique, remains one of the most efficient offensive jutsu in the series, pure chakra manipulation, requiring no hand seals, applicable in close combat instantly. He developed Sage Mode but rarely used it because his other abilities were usually sufficient. His sealing knowledge let him split the Ninetales chakra and create the circumstances that would eventually allow Naruto to befriend Kurama. Minato ranks below only 2 Hokage because his offensive output, while perfectly precise, lacks the scale of the top tier. He could kill almost anyone in single combat, but he couldn't reshape landscapes or fight for days without rest. Hashirama's raw power and Naruto's accumulated abilities exceed what Minato demonstrated. Everyone else falls below the Yellow Flash. Hashirama Senju was so powerful that the entire shinobi world organized itself around avoiding conflict with him. Other villages didn't attack Konoha during his lifetime because no combination of forces they could assemble would matter against the god of shinobi. This wasn't propaganda. This was accurate threat assessment. Wood release alone would place Hashirama in the highest tier, creating forests from nothing, restraining tailed beasts like unruly pets, constructing buildings instantly. The technique had no meaningful counters during his era. Hashirama captured and distributed all 9-tailed beasts to other villages like party favors, demonstrating casual dominance over beings that were previously considered natural disasters rather than opponents. Combined with perfect Sage Mode, his abilities became genuinely absurd. The Sage Mode amplification applied to chakra reserves that were already described as incomprehensible. Hashirama could fight for extended periods that would exhaust any other ninja multiple times over. His wood release techniques during Sage Mode created constructs the size of mountains. The Valley of the End fight establishes his ceiling. Madara Uchiha, the strongest Uchiha in history at that point, attacked with the 9 tails under Sharingan control, combining the most powerful ocular ability with the most powerful tailed beast. Hashirama won. He killed Madara and captured the 9 tails. The resulting battle scarred the landscape permanently, creating geographical features that existed generations later. The true several thousand hands technique represents his maximum output, a wooden Buddha statue with 1,000 arms, each capable of devastating strikes, towering over even the 9 tails in scale. When this construct clashed with Madara's perfect Susanoo-clad 9 tails, the aftermath reshaped terrain that we see throughout the rest of the series. Hashirama ranks second because, despite all this power, he existed in an era before god-tier threats arrived. His opponents were tailed beasts and powerful humans. The shinobi who takes the top spot fought beings that would have annihilated Hashirama without meaningful resistance. Naruto Uzumaki is the strongest Hokage by such a massive margin that comparing him to the others feels almost unfair. The gap between 7th place and 6th place is smaller than the gap between 2nd place and 1st. 6-Path Sage Mode grants abilities that exist outside normal shinobi combat entirely. Truth-seeking balls that negate ninjutsu. Flight. Sensory abilities that detect threats across entire countries. healing that regenerated a missing eye. Hagoromo Otsutsuki handed Naruto power that previous generations couldn't have imagined, let alone achieved through training. Full partnership with Kurama provides functionally unlimited chakra. Previous Jinchuriki fought their tailed beasts constantly, struggling for control, limited by how much power they could safely access. Naruto befriended the Nine Tails. Kurama actively cooperates, providing chakra willingly, offering tactical advice mid-battle, combining their abilities synergistically rather than antagonistically. Beyond Kurama, Naruto carries chakra from all nine-tailed beasts, giving him access to their unique abilities when needed. His feat list sounds like exaggeration until you remember it actually happened. He damaged Kaguya Otsutsuki, the origin of chakra itself, an alien being whose power created the ninja world. He tanked attacks capable of splitting the moon. He fought Final Form Sasuke, who possessed his own god-tier abilities through the Rinnegan to a complete standstill in a battle that damaged the Valley of the End worse than Hashirama and Madara's legendary clash. After becoming Hokage, he defeated Toneri Otsutsuki, while Toneri was actively dropping the moon toward Earth. He fought Momoshiki and Kinshiki Otsutsuki, beings that considered Kaguya a failure and whose power exceeded hers. He did this while operating at reduced capacity due to Hokage administrative duties, limiting his training time. The comparison to Hashirama illustrates the gap clearly. Hashirama's greatest feat was defeating Madara plus the Nine Tails. Naruto, partnered with that same Nine Tails, fought beings that would casually destroy Madara. Hashirama was the strongest of his era. Naruto fights threats from outside the era system entirely. In a hypothetical battle royale of all 7 Hokage, Naruto could plausibly defeat the other 6 simultaneously. Not because they're weak, they're all elite by normal standards, but because the Otsutsuki scaling jumped so far beyond what previous generations encountered. The dead last academy student became something the shinobi world had never seen and likely never will again. The final ranking, accounting for everything above, Naruto exists in a tier by himself. Hashirama stands alone in the second tier. Minato takes third with his undefeated precision. Tobirama's innovations earn fourth despite his student surpassing him. Hiruzen's reputation exceeds his evidence, placing fifth. Tsunade's immortality without corresponding offense puts her sixth. Kakashi, the brilliant tactician who lost his defining ability, takes seventh. Every single one of them deserved to be Hokage. Combat power was never the only qualification, and ranking them this way doesn't diminish their leadership or their contributions to the village. Kakashi guided Konoha through reconstruction. Tsunade revolutionized medicine. Hiruzen held the village together through multiple crises. Being the weakest Hokage still means being one of the strongest ninja in history. But when the question is specifically about combat power, hierarchy exists whether we like it or not. These 7 extraordinary shinobi weren't equals in battle. The evidence shows who would win, and the evidence doesn't care about feelings. And before we continue the video, subscribe on our channel. Madara Uchiha, the unbeatable villain problem. Madara Uchiha broke Naruto's power scaling so completely that the author couldn't figure out how to beat him. This isn't speculation or fan theory. Kishimoto wrote a villain so overwhelmingly powerful that after hundreds of chapters of build-up, the solution was having a different character stab Madara in the back and transform him into someone else. The protagonist never defeated the main antagonist because the main antagonist was genuinely unbeatable by anyone in the story. Understanding how this happened requires tracking Madara's power across multiple forms, each more ridiculous than the last. Living Madara during the Warring States era was already the strongest Uchiha in history. He awakened Mangekyo's Sharingan as a child, developed it into Eternal Mangekyo by taking his dying brother's eyes, and achieved complete body Susanoo, a technique so powerful that the series claims no one who saw it lived to describe it twice. His rivalry with Hashirama Senju lasted decades, with neither able to definitively defeat the other despite countless battles. The Valley of the End fight established both their ceilings. Madara brought the Nine Tails under Sharingan control and armored it with his perfect Susanoo, combining the strongest tailed beast with the strongest offensive technique the Uchiha had ever produced. Hashirama countered with the true several thousand hands, a wooden Buddha construct the size of a mountain. Their clash literally carved the landscape into a valley with waterfalls, terrain changes that persisted for generations. Hashirama won, but the fight demonstrates that even at his peak, Madara pushed the god of shinobi to absolute limits. Then Madara came back wrong, or rather, came back better. Edo Tensei Madara during the 4th Shinobi World War wasn't just resurrected Kabuto, specifically modified him to be stronger than he ever was in life. His body was restored to physical prime while retaining abilities he only developed in old age, including the Rinnegan he awakened decades after his death. The reanimation also grafted Hashirama's cells onto his chest, giving him access to wood release and regeneration. The 5 Kage fight demonstrates exactly how broken this version became. Gaara, Tsunade, Onoki, and Mei, the leaders of the 5 great nations, each Kage-level combatants in their own right fought Madara together, simultaneously, with full cooperation and coordinated strategies. He was bored. Madara treated the battle as a warm-up, testing abilities he hadn't used in decades. When the Kage started coordinating effectively, he created 25 wood clones, each capable of manifesting Susanoo, and had them fight while he watched. When the Kage managed to nearly seal him despite this, he finally bothered using his complete body Susanoo, at which point the fight effectively ended. The meteor summoning happened during this battle. Madara pulled a celestial object from orbit using Chibaku Tensei, then dropped it on the 4th division. When Onoki and Gaara managed to stop it through combined effort, Madara dropped a second one on top of the first. Thousands of shinobi died. Madara's response was mild curiosity about whether anyone survived. This is the point where power scaling conversations get warped. Can X character beat Madara becomes the measuring stick for threat assessment, and almost everyone fails. The 5 caged together couldn't do it. The entire 4th division couldn't do it. Characters who seemed overwhelmingly powerful in earlier arcs become contextually irrelevant because Madara operates on a different scale. Edo Tensei Madara had one theoretical weakness. If Kabuto released the technique or was forced to release it, Madara would return to the afterlife. When Itachi accomplished exactly this, forcing Kabuto to end the reanimation, Madara simply rejected it. He knew enough about the technique, having worked alongside its inventor Tobirama in Konoha's early days, to sever the summoner's control while maintaining his immortal body. The one weakness he had, he removed himself. Revived Madara through the outer path technique should have been weaker. Mortal body, limited chakra, no infinite regeneration. Instead, he immediately absorbed Hashirama's Senjutsu chakra, having pinned him with black receivers during their fight, entering Sage mode without any prior training. He then reclaimed his Rinnegan from Obito, summoned the demonic statue, and began hunting tailed beasts. The scene where Madara fights all 9 tailed beasts simultaneously captures his absurdity. These are creatures that destroyed villages, that required entire military operations to contain, that represented the ultimate weapons in the shinobi world. Madara chains them all at once using the demonic statue and limbo, border jail, a Rinnegan technique that creates invisible shadow clones in a parallel dimension. The beasts can't see what's attacking them. They can't defend against it. They get sealed before anyone can stop it. Ten Tails Jinchuriki Madara transcended anything previously shown in the series. After sealing the Ten Tails into himself, he gained flight, truth-seeking balls that nullify all ninjutsu, regeneration that let him survive being bisected, and enough power that only users of 8 gates or 6 paths chakra could meaningfully fight him. The Guy fight illustrates this. Might Guy opened all 8 gates, a technique that kills the user after providing temporary power beyond any other human capability. He hit Madara with attacks that bent space, that created vacuum zones, that left the immortal Jinchuriki genuinely damaged for the first time. Madara's response was genuine respect and acknowledgement that Guy was the strongest taijutsu user he'd ever faced. Then he prepared to kill Guy anyway, because even 8 gates wasn't enough to actually defeat him. Naruto had to intervene with his newly acquired 6 paths power to save Guy, and even then, the intervention only delayed Madara's victory. Naruto and Sasuke fighting Madara together should have been the climactic final battle. Both had received direct power-ups from Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the Sage of 6 Paths himself. Naruto had 6 Paths Sage mode and chakra from all 9 tailed beasts. Sasuke had the Rinnegan in one eye and the Eternal Mangekyo in the other. These were god-tier abilities, granted specifically to counter the threat Madara posed. It wasn't enough. They fought Madara, they landed hits, they prevented him from immediately accomplishing his goals. But at no point did they gain a decisive advantage. Madara absorbed the God Tree to heal from their attacks and become stronger. He stole Kakashi's eye to use Kamui. He cast the infinite Tsukuyomi successfully, trapping the entire world in his genjutsu. The protagonists, with their maximum power-ups, failed to stop the villain's plan from succeeding. This is where Kishimoto's problem became inescapable. How do you defeat a character who has beaten everyone you've established as powerful? The 5 Kage lost. The tailed beasts lost. Guy with 8 gates lost. Naruto and Sasuke with literal divine power-ups were losing. Every tool in the narrative had been used and found insufficient. The answer was Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu stabbed Madara in the back and revealed it had been manipulating him for centuries as part of Kaguya Otsutsuki's revival plan. Madara's body became the vessel for Kaguya's resurrection, removing him from the fight, not through defeat, but through transformation into a different character entirely. The unbeatable villain got beaten by a plot twist, not by any character actually being stronger than him. Some fans defend this as thematically appropriate. Madara's arrogance and belief that he controlled everything led to his downfall through forces beyond his understanding. There's validity to this reading, but from a power scaling perspective, it's an admission that the author wrote himself into a corner. Madara was too strong to beat conventionally, so he had to be removed unconventionally. The aftermath confirms this interpretation. Kaguya, who absorbed Madara's power and added her own, required both Naruto and Sasuke to seal rather than defeat. They couldn't kill her, they could only trap her in another dimension. And this was against an enemy who, despite having more raw power than Madara, was significantly less skilled in combat. Kaguya had overwhelming abilities, but limited tactical sense. Madara had overwhelming abilities and centuries of battle experience and strategic intelligence that would have made the sealing approach far more difficult. Madara warps all subsequent power scaling conversations because his existence establishes an upper bound that barely anyone reaches. Characters get measured against him. Could they survive the meteor? Could they damage Ten Tails Madara? Could they contribute meaningfully to the 5 Kage fight? Most fail these questions, which contextualizes their power levels, even when fighting completely different opponents. The scaling also works retroactively. Hashirama being able to fight and eventually defeat living Madara without the Rinnegan or Ten Tails enhancements places Hashirama firmly in the top tier. First Hokage fans use Madara scaling to argue Hashirama would be competitive against characters from the War arc, since he beat someone who could beat almost anyone else. The logic is circular but internally consistent. Edo Tensei as a concept becomes terrifying specifically because of what it did for Madara. Any character resurrected this way gains unlimited chakra and immortality. But Kabuto enhancing Madara beyond his living prime demonstrates that the technique can do even more than that. If Madara can be made stronger dead than alive, what would an enhanced Hashirama look like? An enhanced Minato? The technique's potential becomes theoretically limitless, which is probably why the series never explores it again after the war. The tragedy of Madara as a character gets lost in power scaling discussions, but it's worth noting. He genuinely believed the infinite Tsukuyomi would save humanity from suffering. His methods were monstrous, but his goals came from watching endless cycles of war destroy everyone he cared about. When he finally dies, the real death, after Kaguya's defeat, his last conversation with Hashirama acknowledges that his friend's methods for achieving peace were better than his own. The unstoppable villain was also a broken man who couldn't let go of his pain. But power scaling doesn't care about tragedy. Power scaling cares about feats, and Madara's feats are almost unmatched. Summoning meteors, defeating 5 Kage simultaneously, capturing 9-tailed beasts at once, surviving 8 Gates Guy, casting a worldwide genjutsu, forcing the author to remove him through Deus Ex Machina because no character could actually win against him. When someone asks where a character ranks in Naruto, the question eventually becomes, but what about Madara? The answer is usually, they lose, because Madara was built to be unbeatable, and the story confirmed that he was. Naruto versus Sasuke, a rivalry in numbers. Okay, let's talk about the debate, the one that's been raging since 2002, the one that's ended friendships and started forum wars. Naruto or Sasuke, who actually wins? The series says they're equals. Their final fight ends with both of them lying in a crater, each missing an arm, neither able to move. Perfect tie, very poetic, and honestly, kind of suspicious. Think about it. These two trained under completely different masters, learned completely different techniques, fought completely different enemies, traveled completely different paths for years, and somehow they end up exactly, precisely, mathematically equal? The odds of that happening naturally are basically zero. Either Kishimoto carefully engineered their growth to match, or one of them is actually stronger and the tie exists because the story needs it to. Let's break down every major fight and figure out what's really going on. The first Valley of the End battle sets the terms. Sasuke's defecting to join Orochimaru. Naruto chases him down, determined to drag his friend back by force. At this point, Sasuke has pretty much every advantage. 3 Tomoe Sharingan, fully developed. Curse mark that transforms him into a winged demon, Chidori. Better taijutsu fundamentals from actually paying attention at the academy. Naruto has shadow clones, a Rasengan he can barely form without help, and a giant fox sealed in his gut that he can't control. When they fight using their normal abilities, Sasuke wins. Not close. His Sharingan reads Naruto's movements before Naruto makes them. His speed is just better. His Chidori matches Rasengan but activates faster. Naruto's shadow clones buy time, but Sasuke cuts through them like they're nothing. Then Naruto taps into the 9 tails. Everything changes. Wounds heal instantly, speed jumps through the roof, raw power starts overwhelming Sasuke's techniques. One-tailed Naruto nearly kills Sasuke even after Sasuke goes full curse mark level 2, his own transformation that should have evened things out. Their final clash creates a massive crater. When the dust settles, Sasuke's standing over an unconscious Naruto. Except here's the thing, Sasuke won because he chose not to kill. That final exchange, Sasuke punches Naruto. Just punches him. He could have used Chidori through Naruto's chest. He specifically chose a non-lethal hit because killing your best friend awakens the Mangekyo Sharingan, and Sasuke refused to do things Itachi's way. Naruto survived because Sasuke let him. So what's the actual result? Sasuke wins at base power. Naruto wins when the fox comes out. When both go maximum power, Sasuke controls the outcome. Make of that what you will. Shippuden turns into a seesaw. Both train like crazy, Naruto with Jiraiya, Sasuke with Orochimaru, and they keep trading advantages back and forth. When they reunite at Orochimaru's hideout, Sasuke demolishes Team 7 without breaking a sweat. He literally enters Naruto's mind, suppresses the 9 tails, which impresses even the fox, and leaves whenever he feels like it. Total dominance. Then Sasuke kills Itachi while Naruto masters Sage Mode and defeats Pain. Both are insane accomplishments, but they're impossible to compare directly. Sasuke's victory came against an Itachi who was dying of illness and deliberately holding back. Naruto's victory required the 9 tails saving him mid-fight. Neither is a clean win. The 5 Kage Summit shows post-Itachi Sasuke at his peak crazy era. Mangekyo Sharingan active, Amaterasu burning everything, incomplete Susanoo forming. He fights the 4th Raikage nearly to a standstill, survives encounters with multiple Kage, and assassinates Danzo. His eyes are failing by the end, but fighting that many Kage-level opponents and walking away? That's elite! Naruto at the same time can use Sage Mode but hasn't befriended Kurama yet. When they briefly clash after Danzo's death, neither gains an advantage, but both are exhausted and half-dead, so it doesn't prove much. Then the war arc happens and everything before becomes irrelevant. Naruto befriends Kurama. Full 9 tails cooperation. He also gets 6 Paths Sage Mode directly from the Sage of 6 Paths himself. Truth-seeking balls, flight, sensing across dimensions, power on a completely different level. These aren't trained abilities. They're literally divine gifts handed to him because the world needs saving. Sasuke gets 6 Paths Yin power and awakens the Rinnegan. Ameno Tejikara lets him swap positions instantly. He can travel dimensions. He has access to all the 6 Paths techniques. Combined with Eternal Mangekyo and Complete Body Susanoo, his toolkit is basically, what can't I do? Kurama straight up compares them to the Sage of 6 Paths. Together they damage Kaguya, seal her away, and stand as the 2 strongest people alive. But which one is stronger alone? The final Valley of the End rematch should answer this definitively. Sasuke wants to become a revolutionary Shadow Hokage by killing the current Kage and monopolizing hatred. His plan is insane, but that's a different video. He's fighting with full killing intent. Naruto wants to stop him without killing him. He's explicitly holding back. This matters. Naruto is literally not trying as hard as Sasuke is trying. The fight goes through phases. Basic techniques, no clear winner. Sasuke busts out Susanoo. Naruto goes tailed beast mode. Sasuke's Chidori clashes with Naruto's tailed beast ball. Huge explosion, neither hurt. Their minds connect during the clash because anime, and they argue about ideology while their attacks collide. Sasuke escalates by absorbing chakra from all 9 captured tailed beasts into his Susanoo. His construct becomes massive. Naruto counters by merging his tailed beast mode with 2 shadow clone avatars, matching Sasuke's scale. Enhanced attacks clash. Both constructs get stripped away. Neither has much chakra left. Now it's just taijutsu. 2 exhausted teenagers punching each other through the night. Sasuke tries to absorb Naruto's gathered chakra with his Rinnegan, but Naruto anticipated this. He didn't mold the chakra to match his signature, so Sasuke can't use it. Smart move. Naruto lands a solid punch. Final exchange. Sasuke's Chidori against Naruto's Rasengan, powered by the last chakra Kurama can give. Collision. Devastation. They wake up the next day, each missing an arm. Fight over. Tie. Technically accurate. But let's look at the context. Naruto wasn't trying to kill Sasuke. Multiple times during the fight, Sasuke yells at him for not fighting with lethal intent. The full offensive output Naruto used against Pain, Obito, and Kaguya never appears. His goal was to exhaust Sasuke, not destroy him. If both fought equally hard to win, result might be different. Sasuke absorbed massive amounts of extra chakra throughout the fight. The Tailed Beasts. Naruto's poorly molded chakra. Everything his Rinnegan could grab. Despite all that external power-up, he still only matched Naruto, who mainly relied on his partnership with Kurama. Think about what that says about their natural reserves. Naruto's durability is insane. 9 tails healing, 6 paths regeneration, Uzumaki-level vitality. He can survive injuries that would kill normal humans multiple times over. Sasuke has no comparable regeneration. In a pure endurance match, Naruto outlasts basically everyone. But Sasuke has other advantages. Sharingan perception, tactical intelligence, ability versatility. He can swap positions, control flames, absorb chakra, use techniques from multiple ninja traditions. Naruto's offensive toolkit is narrower Rasengan variants, shadow clones, tailed beast attacks. Powerful as hell, but less flexible. The thematic argument says they have to be equal. Naruto and Sasuke are transmigrants of Ashura and Indra, chakra descendants of the Sage of Six Paths. Their conflict mirrors the brother versus brother rivalry that created the ninja world's endless cycle of hatred. Breaking that cycle means neither can dominate. The story doesn't work otherwise. From this angle, the tie isn't coincidence. It's destiny. They're equal because they're meant to be equal. Power scaling fans find this unsatisfying. Power isn't determined by what the narrative needs. Either Naruto's raw chakra gives him advantages Sasuke can't overcome, or Sasuke's intelligence lets him outmaneuver Naruto's brute force. The middle ground where they perfectly cancel out feels forced. Adult versions make things weirder. The series says they're still equals. Together, they can supposedly destroy the world, but their post-war lives are completely different. Naruto becomes Hokage. Paperwork, meetings, village administration. He's busy being a political leader, not a fighter. His skills don't get worse, but they don't develop either. Same toolkit he had at war's end. Sasuke wanders the world investigating Otsutsuki threats. Regular combat, peak condition, new applications for his abilities. His Rinnegan dimensional travel keeps expanding his understanding of space-time ninjutsu. He stays sharp. Against Momoshiki, both perform comparably. Naruto's tailed beast mode matches Sasuke's Susanoo. Their coordinated attacks handle what 5 Kage couldn't. Neither obviously outshines the other. Then they both get nerfed into the ground. Momoshiki, controlling Boruto's body, stabs out Sasuke's Rinnegan. Instantly, he loses dimensional travel, Ame no Teijikara, 6 paths techniques, enhanced perception, massive power drop. He keeps his eternal Mangekyo, but the gap between Mangekyo and Rinnegan is huge. Naruto loses Kurama. Baryon mode, the last resort that burns the fox's life force, kills Kurama permanently. Naruto survives, but without the tailed beast that defined his entire combat identity. Both diminished. Both still strong by normal standards. But comparing them now is like asking which car is faster after both had their engines removed. The factors that made the comparison meaningful don't apply anymore. So here's the honest answer. During the series proper, Naruto and Sasuke are close enough that either could win depending on circumstances. Calling it a tie isn't wrong, just incomplete. Naruto has advantages in endurance and raw power. Sasuke has advantages in versatility and combat intelligence. neither advantage is decisive against someone in the same tier. The rivalry works because it's genuinely close. Not perfectly equal, that would be statistically impossible, but close enough that arguing either side has merit. Naruto fans point to durability and chakra reserves. Sasuke fans point to technique and tactical flexibility. Both find evidence in the text. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe Kishimoto designed them to be unresolvable, knowing fans would debate it forever. If so, mission accomplished. Who wins, Naruto or Sasuke, has generated more discussion than probably any other anime power scaling question. The answer is frustratingly both and neither. They're not equal in having identical stats. They're equal in that their different strengths cancel out against each other specifically. Naruto might beat opponents Sasuke would lose to. Sasuke might beat opponents Naruto would lose to. Against each other? Stalemate. The series says equals. The evidence says it's complicated. Fans will argue about it until the heat death of the universe. Kishimoto probably wouldn't have it any other way. The Akatsuki tier list S rank, criminals ranked. One Akatsuki member made 600 billion paper bombs to kill a single person. 600 billion. That's not a typo. That's more explosive tags than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. She spent years preparing this trap, calculated exactly how long her target could stay intangible, and designed an attack that would detonate continuously for 10 straight minutes. And it almost worked. This is why ranking Akatsuki members is so much more interesting than it looks. Every single one of them has an S-rank bounty. Every single one is a missing nin, so dangerous their home village gave up trying to capture them. But within this group of elite criminals, the power gaps are absolutely enormous. Some of them could destroy villages. Some of them lost to Genin. Let's rank them properly. Starting at the bottom, we have Zetsu, both halves. And honestly, putting Zetsu on a combat tier list feels almost unfair because Zetsu was never designed for fighting. White Zetsu's whole thing was infiltration, intelligence gathering, and being creepy. Black Zetsu's whole thing was manipulating the entire ninja world for 1,000 years to resurrect his mom. Combat? Not really their department. White Zetsu could shapeshift, absorb chakra through spores, and travel underground. Useful abilities for spying. Completely useless against anyone who actually wants to fight. When Sasuke needed to test his new eyes after getting Itachi's transplant, he used White Zetsu as target practice. One Amaterasu sword and White Zetsu was gone. That's the extent of his combat showings. Black Zetsu is trickier to place because his one real combat feat is stabbing Madara Uchiha from behind, which sounds impressive until you remember that Madara wasn't fighting him. Madara was monologuing about his victory while Black Zetsu, attached to his body, betrayed him. It's less a combat feat and more a backstabbing feat, literally. As a unit, Zetsu's contribution was being everywhere, knowing everything and dying pathetically whenever anyone actually targeted them. Essential for the plot, fodder in a fight. Next up is Hidan, and this is where the tier list gets controversial. Hidan is immortal, genuinely, actually immortal. He survived being decapitated. He survived having his body blown into pieces by hundreds of explosive tags. He's probably still alive at the bottom of that pit Shikamaru buried him in, screaming curses at nobody. So why is he ranked so low? Because immortality doesn't win fights. It just means you don't lose them by dying. Hidan's combat ability is almost entirely dependent on one gimmick. Get the enemy's blood, draw his Jashin symbol, stand in the circle, and whatever damage he does to himself also happens to them. If he stabs his own heart, they die. If he cuts his own leg, they're crippled. It's a nasty technique that killed Asuma Sarutobi, one of Konoha's elite jonin. But there's a massive problem. Hidan is slow. He admitted it himself, saying he's the slowest attacker in Akatsuki. His scythe is designed to draw blood, not deal fatal damage. Against anyone fast enough to avoid getting cut, or smart enough to figure out his gimmick, Hidan becomes a non-threat. Shikamaru proved this by defeating Hidan with preparation and planning. A Chunin beat an immortal S-rank criminal by figuring out how his technique worked and exploiting its weaknesses. Shikamaru even tricked Hidan into using Kakuzu's blood for his ritual, causing Hidan to destroy one of his own partner's hearts. Then Shikamaru buried him alive and walked away. That's Hidan's ceiling. Deadly against people who don't know what he does. Manageable against anyone with intelligence and a plan. Moving up, we have Kakuzu. The oldest Akatsuki member by decades, old enough to have fought the first Hokage and survived. His whole deal was stealing hearts from powerful ninja to extend his lifespan and add their elemental affinities to his arsenal. By the time we meet him, Kakuzu has 5 hearts, each one granting him access to a different nature transformation. Fire, wind, lightning, water, earth. He can use any element, combine them for devastating attacks, and survive being killed 4 times before actually dying. His body is held together by thousands of black threads that let him extend his limbs, repair damage, and even stitch other people's injuries. Kakuzu tanked Naruto's first Rasen Shuriken. Not perfectly, it destroyed 2 of his hearts, but he survived a technique that shreds targets at the cellular level. That's durability most ninja can only dream about. His problem? Kakuzu fought Hashirama Senju and lost. He fought Team Asuma and would have won if reinforcements hadn't arrived. He fought Naruto's improved Rasen Shuriken and died. Kakuzu is strong, experienced, and versatile, but he's consistently shown losing to protagonist-level opponents. Still, 5 hearts and all 5 elements puts him firmly above Hidan. At least Kakuzu could theoretically fight anyone. Hidan's gimmick has too many counters. Deidara comes next, and he's fascinating because his ceiling is genuinely terrifying, but his floor is embarrassingly low. At his best, Deidara is a walking weapon of mass destruction. His C3 bomb could level a city block. His C4 Karura releases microscopic explosives that enter targets' bodies and detonate from the inside. And his ultimate technique, C0, turns his entire body into a bomb with a 10-kilometer blast radius. That's not an attack. That's a tactical nuclear strike. Deidara fought Gaara, the 5th Kazekage, and Jinchuriki of the One Tail, and won. He captured a tailed beast solo. That's an achievement most ninja could never dream of accomplishing. But then Deidara fought Sasuke and lost, badly. His explosives are earth-based, which makes them vulnerable to lightning. Sasuke's Chidori variants neutralized most of his bombs. Deidara was forced to use C0, his suicide technique, as a last resort. And even then, Sasuke survived by summoning Manda as a shield and teleporting away. Deidara's ranking suffers because his hard counter is Lightning Release, which multiple elite ninja can use. He's devastating against opponents without that advantage, but against anyone with lightning techniques, his entire fighting style gets shut down. Sasori slots in around the same tier as Deidara, which is fitting since they were partners and argued constantly about whose art was superior. Sasori's peak feat is controlling 100 puppets simultaneously using chakra strings. No one else in the series comes close to this level of puppet mastery. He also killed the 3rd Kazekage, the strongest Kazekage in history, and turned his body into a puppet weapon. Having a Kazekage in your arsenal is no joke, but Sasori lost to Sakura and Chiyo. Yes, Chiyo was a legendary puppeteer who trained Sasori himself. Yes, Sakura had studied under Tsunade and developed the antidote to Sasori's poison. But it's still 2 people, one of them a teenager, defeating a man who could control 100 puppets and had killed a Kage. There's debate about whether Sasori let himself lose. He had openings to kill both opponents and didn't take them. Some fans argue he wanted to die. The text doesn't confirm this either way. But even if he was fighting at full capacity, losing to Sakura and Chiyo puts a hard ceiling on his power level. Now we're entering the upper tiers, and this is where power gaps become massive. Konan is one of the most underrated fighters in the entire series. The 600 billion paper bombs mentioned earlier, that was her attack against Obito Uchiha, one of the strongest characters in the show. She spent years studying Obito's Kamui. She calculated that he could only remain intangible for 5 minutes. She designed an attack that would detonate continuously for 10 minutes, twice his limit. She split the lake of Omega Cure into an abyss filled with those 600 billion explosive tags and dropped Obito into it. The plan worked. Obito couldn't stay intangible long enough. He survived only because he used Izanagi, a forbidden technique that sacrifices an eye to rewrite reality. Without that trump card, Konan would have killed him. Think about what that means. A woman made of paper nearly killed the man who controlled the 4th Mizukage, attacked Konoha with the 9 Tails, manipulated Akatsuki from the shadows, and eventually became the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. Her only mistake was not accounting for a technique she had no way of knowing about. Konan's problem is that she only has one really impressive feat. Against Obito, she was incredible. Against anyone else, we don't have enough data. She fought Jiraiya briefly, but was quickly captured. Her role was more supportive than combative. But that one feat is so absurd that she deserves a spot above the mid-tier members. Preparation and intelligence count for a lot in power scaling, and Conan demonstrated both in spades. Kisame is often called the tailless-tailed beast, and he earned that nickname. His chakra reserves were compared to a Jinchuriki's. He could fuse with his sword Samehada to become a Sharkman hybrid that regenerated instantly by absorbing water. His water prison shark dance technique created a massive dome of water that constantly drained opponents' chakra while giving Kisame unlimited healing. Kisame fought Killer Bee, the Eight Tails Jinchuriki, and one of the strongest characters in the series, and nearly won. Bee had to use Samehada against him to turn the tide. Later, Kisame was captured only because Guy used the 7th gate against him, and even then Kisame killed himself rather than be interrogated. His downside is that he never got a clean win against a truly elite opponent. Lost to Guy, who was using gates, lost to Killer Bee via Samehada betrayal, captured by the combined efforts of multiple Konoha ninja. He's strong enough to fight Jinchuriki, but not quite strong enough to beat them consistently. Itachi has already been covered in detail earlier, but he belongs in the top 3 Akatsuki members: Tsukuyomi, Amaterasu, and Susanoo. The sword of Totsuka that seals anything it pierces. The Yata mirror that reflects all attacks. Genjutsu strong enough to break Kabuto's Edo Tensei control. The only thing keeping Itachi from the absolute top is his illness and limited stamina. At full health, he might have been the strongest, as he actually was, fighting with terminal illness and going blind from Mangekyo overuse. He's slightly below the very peak. Pain, or more accurately, Nagato, sits at the top of the main Akatsuki roster. 6 bodies controlled remotely, shared vision across all of them, the Rinnegan granting access to every elemental nature and the 6 paths techniques. Shinra Tensei strong enough to flatten Konoha in a single attack. Chibaku Tensei that creates miniature moons to trap opponents. The ability to revive the dead. Nagato destroyed the Hidden Leaf Village. Not damaged it, destroyed it. He left a crater where the village used to be, and he did it while using a fraction of his power through remote-controlled corpses. When Nagato actually fought using his real body during the Fourth War, he overwhelmed Naruto and Killer Bee simultaneously. 2 Jinchuriki couldn't handle him until Itachi showed up to help, and even then, Nagato was only defeated because he was being controlled by Kabuto and couldn't fight strategically. Pain versus the village is still one of the most impressive displays of raw power in the entire series. But above even Pain sits Obito. Obito created the Akautsu. He manipulated Nagato into believing he was the leader, while Obito pulled strings from the shadows. He attacked Konoha with the 9 Tails when he was still a teenager. He controlled the 4th Mizukage and used Kirigakur as his personal weapon. His Kamui made him essentially untouchable. He could phase through any attack and teleport anything he touched to another dimension. The only reason anyone ever hit him was because Kakashi had the partner eye and could counter the technique from within. Obito fought Naruto, Killer Bee, Kakashi, and Guy at the same time and held his own. He became the 10 Tails Jinchuriki and gained power that exceeded the first Hokage. He was only defeated because Naruto's talk no jutsu convinced him to switch sides. So, the final tier list looks something like this. God tier, Obito and Pain, village-destroying power levels that no normal ninja could hope to match. Elite tier, Itachi and Kisame, capable of fighting Jinchuriki and winning under the right circumstances. High tier, Conan, Sasori, Deidara, dangerous specialists with incredible peaks but notable vulnerabilities. Mid-tier, Kakuzu, strong and versatile, but consistently loses to protagonist-level opponents. Low-tier, Hiden, deadly gimmick, terrible stats, beaten by a Chunin. Fodder tier, Zetsu, never designed for combat, never performed in combat. Every Akatsuki member earned their S-rank classification. But within that elite group, the difference between the strongest and weakest is the difference between a force of nature and an inconvenience. Subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying our breakdown. 8th Gate Guy, the strongest human moment. Might Guy has no special bloodline. He can't even use ninjutsu or genjutsu properly. He's just a guy who trained really, really hard. And he nearly killed the strongest Uchiha in history. When Madara Uchiha, fully powered as the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, looked at the damage Guy had done to him and declared that Guy was the strongest taijutsu user he had ever faced, that wasn't flattery. Madara had lived through the Warring States period. He'd fought Hashirama Senju, the god of shinobi, for decades. He'd seen every fighting style the ninja world had to offer across multiple generations. None of them compared to what Guy did in that moment. To understand why this feat is so absurd, you need to understand the 8 gates. The human body naturally limits how much chakra flows through it. Think of it like a car's governor that prevents you from going over a certain speed. Your brain does this to protect you, because pushing your body to its actual limits would destroy it. The 8 gates are specific points along the chakra pathway that enforce these limits. With enough training, a ninja can learn to force these gates open, temporarily removing the restrictions and accessing more of their body's true potential. The first gate, the gate of opening, is located in the brain. Opening it removes mental inhibitions, letting you push past the psychological barriers that normally hold you back. It's the least dangerous gate and the easiest to open. The second gate, the gate of healing, increases physical strength and has a recovery effect that can temporarily re-energize an exhausted body. The third gate, the gate of life, is where things start getting serious. The user's skin turns red from increased blood flow, their pupils disappear, their hair stands on end. Veins bulge across their entire body. It looks painful because it is painful. The fourth gate, the gate of pain, lives up to its name. Opening this gate causes muscles to start tearing. Rock Lee's nose began bleeding just from opening it during his fight with Gaara. The fifth gate, the gate of limit, pushes the body even further. Lee suffered compound fractures in all his limbs after using this gate during the Chunin exams. The sixth gate, the gate of view, creates an aura around the user and enables the morning peacock technique. The user's punches become so fast that friction with the air literally ignites their fists. They're punching so fast they create fire. The seventh gate, the gate of wonder, causes the body to secrete a blue sweat that immediately evaporates, creating a visible aura. Opening this gate allows the daytime tiger, a punch that compresses air into a projectile. After using this gate, Guy's muscle fibers were so damaged that even being touched caused him intense pain. And then there's the eighth gate, the gate of death. Opening this gate requires the user to puncture their own chest with their thumb to direct chakra to their heart. While it's open, the heart pumps at maximum capacity, granting power roughly 100 times greater than normal. A red aura made of vaporizing blood emanates from the user's body. The cost is simple. You die. Not probably die, not might die if you're unlucky. You die. The body cooks itself from the inside out until the user crumbles to ash. There's no version of opening the eighth gate where you survive unless someone with god-tier abilities intervenes to save you. This is the technique Might Guy used against Madara Uchiha. Madara at this point was the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki. He had absorbed the God Tree. He possessed both Rinnegan and the Rinne Sharingan. His power exceeded the first Hokage, exceeded the 5 Kage combined, exceeded anything the ninja world had seen since the Sage of Six Paths himself. Naruto, with Six Paths Sage Mode, and Sasuke, with his new Rinnegan together, couldn't decisively defeat him. Guy charged in with nothing but his fists and his willingness to die. The fight is one of the most visually stunning sequences in the entire series. Guy moves so fast that space itself bends around him. His evening elephant technique, a series of sequential punches that create air cannons, hammers Madara with hits powerful enough to shatter a god. And Madara just keeps regenerating. But he's not unimpressed. Madara is actively enjoying this fight. For the first time since his resurrection, he's facing an opponent who can actually challenge him in direct combat. He compliments Guy's speed and power. He acknowledges the damage. He's having fun. And then Guy uses Night Guy. This is a single kick so powerful that it warps space in the shape of a dragon. Guy delivers it at such speed that he breaks his own leg from the force. The attack hits Madara directly, and for a moment, it actually seems like it might kill him. Madara's body is torn apart. His torso is destroyed. When the dust settles, Madara speaks. He calls it the strongest attack he has ever faced. Let that sink in for a moment. Madara Uchiha, who fought Hashirama Senju for years, who has seen every jutsu the 5 great nations could throw at him, who at this point has tanked attacks from Naruto and Sasuke-wielding powers granted by the Sage of Six Paths himself, declares that a kick from Might Guy is the strongest attack he has ever taken. This is where power scaling gets complicated, because despite this incredible statement, Guy didn't win. Madara regenerated, his 10 Tails healing factor repaired the damage, and Guy was left dying, his body burning itself to ash. If Naruto hadn't arrived with his new yin-yang release powers to stabilize Guy's life force, the green beast of Konoha would have died right there. So, what does this actually mean for Guy's power level? On one hand, 8th Gate Guy was doing something nobody else in the war could do. He was damaging Jubi Madara in straight combat, not through sealing techniques, not through special hacks abilities, pure physical force. His speed and power exceeded what even 6 paths enhanced fighters were demonstrating. On the other hand, he still couldn't kill Madara. The regeneration was too strong. Guy's attacks, as devastating as they were, couldn't overcome the healing factor of a 10 Tails Jinchuriki. He needed a finishing blow that would completely destroy Madara in one hit. And Night Guy, despite being the strongest attack Madara had ever faced, wasn't quite enough. This creates an interesting question. Could 8th Gate Guy beat anyone else at that tier? Against Kaguya? Probably not. She has dimensional travel and can simply retreat to avoid fatal damage. Guy is fast, but he's not crossing dimensions. Against Naruto or Sasuke? Unlikely. Both have their own ridiculous speed feats by the end of the war, and while Guy might land devastating hits, they both have healing factors and enough durability to potentially survive until Guy's body gives out. Against Hashirama in his prime? This one's actually debatable. Hashirama had massive chakra reserves and could regenerate without hand seals, but we don't know if his healing was as strong as Jubi Madara's. Guy's attacks might have been enough to overwhelm Hashirama's recovery. The honest answer is that 8th Gate Guy represents a matchup-specific peak. Against opponents without regeneration or defensive hacks, he would be nearly unstoppable. His speed and power are genuinely god tier. But the ninja world's strongest fighters almost all have some form of regeneration or special defense, which makes pure physical damage less effective. What 8th Gate Guy really represents is the ceiling for hard work in Naruto. The series frequently emphasizes the theme of genius versus effort. Characters born with special bloodlines like the Sharingan or tailed beasts have inherent advantages. Guy and Lee represent what's possible for someone without those gifts who simply refuses to give up. And the answer is everything except the very top. Guy can match god-tier opponents. He can damage them. He can make them acknowledge him as the strongest they've ever faced. But he can't quite beat them. At the absolute peak of the power scale, the special bloodlines and supernatural advantages still win out. There's something both inspiring and heartbreaking about that. Guy gave everything he had, literally everything. He was willing to die to stop Madara, and his attack was strong enough that Madara considered it the greatest threat he'd ever faced. But it still wasn't enough to win on its own. Guy needed Naruto's intervention to survive, and Naruto and Sasuke's combined power to actually seal Madara away. The aftermath is similarly bittersweet. Naruto's yin-yang release saved Guy's life, but the damage to his body was permanent. Guy's right leg was destroyed by Night Guy. He spends the rest of his life in a wheelchair, occasionally using a crutch, continuing to train and teach despite his disability. He paid the price for opening the 8th Gate. He just didn't pay the full price because Naruto was there to cover the difference. In power scaling terms, 8th Gate Guy exists in a strange space. For a brief window, he was one of the strongest beings on the planet. His attack power exceeded anything a normal human should be capable of achieving. Madara's statement wasn't hyperbole. Against a different opponent, one without godlike regeneration, that fight ends with Guy victorious. But the Naruto universe at its highest levels is dominated by characters with hacks abilities that hard work simply can't replicate. Kamui, Rinnegan techniques, truth-seeking balls, infinite Tsukuyomi. Guy's physical power couldn't counter any of those abilities. He could only hit really, really hard. Sometimes, that's enough. Against Jubi Madara, it almost was. The 8th Gate represents what happens when a human being removes every single limiter their body has. The result is power that can challenge gods. The cost is death, and even then, even burning your entire existence for a single moment of maximum power, you still might not be strong enough to win. That's both the triumph and tragedy of Might Guy's strongest moment. Kaguya, the controversial final boss. Here's a hot take that might get me some angry comments. Kaguya Otsutsuki is stronger than Madara Uchiha. There, I said it. The rabbit goddess who shows up in the final arc with basically no setup, steals the final boss spot from the villain we'd been building toward for hundreds of episodes, and gets defeated through what amounts to a group project, is actually the stronger character. Most fans hate her. And honestly, they're not wrong to be disappointed. But the disappointment isn't about her power level. It's about the storytelling. Those are two different conversations, and power scaling only cares about one of them. So let's have both. First, why did Kaguya replace Madara in the first place? The real answer, the one fans figured out pretty quickly, is that Kishimoto wrote himself into a corner. Madara had become too strong. We covered this in an earlier section, but it's worth repeating. Madara, as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, was genuinely unbeatable. He'd survived 8 Gates Guy. He'd fought Naruto and Sasuke with their 6 Paths power-ups and wasn't losing. He'd successfully cast the infinite Tsukuyomi. His plan had literally already worked. How do you beat someone like that through combat? The answer Kishimoto came up with was, you don't. Instead, you have Black Zetsu stab him in the back, reveal that everything Madara believed about his own agency was a lie, and transform him into someone else entirely. It's not satisfying from a narrative perspective because Madara never gets a proper defeat. He just stops being the final boss. But from a power scaling perspective, this actually makes sense. Kaguya needed to be stronger than Madara for the transition to work at all. If she were weaker, then Naruto and Sasuke should have been able to beat her more easily than they could beat Madara, which would make the whole transformation pointless. So what can Kaguya actually do? Her most distinctive ability is dimensional travel. Kaguya can create portals to different dimensions and drag others through with her. She has at least 6 personal dimensions we see in the series. A lava dimension, an ice dimension, a desert dimension, a high gravity dimension, an acid lake dimension, and her core dimension where the God Tree grows. She can shift between these instantly, and she can separate enemies by sending them to different dimensions. This is absurdly powerful for combat purposes. Imagine fighting someone who can just leave whenever they want. And not just leave, but potentially strand you in a dimension of boiling lava while they go deal with your allies somewhere else. Naruto and Sasuke spent a significant portion of their fight with her just trying to reunite after she separated them. Her Byakugan is described as more powerful than any other in the series, far exceeding even her son Hamura's. Combined with her hair, which she can harden into needle-like projectiles, she can target vital points with perfect accuracy. She used this to pierce Susanoo, which is supposed to be an absolute defense. Then there's the all-killing ash bones. These are projectiles that Kaguya fires from her back or palms, and anything living that they touch disintegrates into ash. Not wounds, not damage. Complete cellular destruction. This is what killed Obito Uchiha. One hit, and you're done. Her Rinne Sharingan gives her access to the infinite Tsukuyomi, which she can cast on the entire world simultaneously. It also grants her the standard Sharingan abilities like reading chakra flow and recognizing genjutsu. The 80 Gods vacuum attack lets her create massive chakra fists that can destroy a complete body Susanoo in a single hit. We're talking about breaking through what's supposed to be the ultimate Uchiha defense like it's made of paper. And then there's the expansive truth-seeking ball. This is where power scaling gets really interesting, because this technique is described in almost apocalyptic terms. Black Zetsu explains that it contains every chakra nature and has the power to reshape the world by reducing it to nothing first. It's essentially a reset button for reality, capable of destroying everything so Kaguya can start over. How powerful is that exactly? The community debates this constantly. Some people argue it's planetary level based on the description of reshaping the world. Others point out that it was only going to be used in one of Kaguya's pocket dimensions, which might limit its actual scale. The truth is probably somewhere in between. It's definitely capable of massive destruction, enough to threaten anything Team 7 could put up as defense, but we never see it actually deployed, so its upper limit remains unclear. What we do know is that Naruto and Sasuke couldn't beat Kaguya through pure power. This is crucial for understanding her place in the power hierarchy. Naruto had 6 paths Sage Mode, all 9-tailed beasts chakra, and truth-seeking balls of his own. Sasuke had his newly awakened Rinnegan, complete body Susanoo, and 6 paths Yin power. Together, they represent the absolute peak of what humans can achieve in the Naruto universe. And they couldn't kill Kaguya. Not couldn't beat her, couldn't kill her. The only way to stop Kaguya was through the 6 paths Chibaku Tensei seal that Hagoromo specifically gave them for that purpose. They had to touch her simultaneously with both seals active, which required getting past all her dimensional nonsense and avoiding instant death from her ash bones. Against Madara, Naruto, and Sasuke were holding their own in combat. They were landing hits, forcing him to regenerate, making progress. Against Kaguya, they're just trying to survive long enough to execute the sealing technique. So is Kaguya stronger than Madara? Raw power? Absolutely yes. Her chakra is described as surpassing even Ten Tails Jinchuriki Madara's. She's immortal in a way that even Madara's regeneration couldn't match. Her dimensional abilities give her escape options Madara never had. Her ash bones can kill in ways that bypass durability entirely. Combat skill? No. And this is the key distinction. Madara was a warrior who had been fighting for his entire life. He trained, he strategized, he adapted. He could read opponents, predict their moves, and counter their techniques. When he fought, it was with centuries of accumulated battle experience. Kaguya is essentially a goddess who's never really had to fight. She's so powerful that combat skill was never necessary. When she first awakened her abilities, she ended wars by overwhelming everyone with raw power, not by outmaneuvering them tactically. Her sons managed to seal her the first time, not because they were stronger, but because they were smarter and more coordinated. This shows in her fight against Team 7. Kaguya has every advantage in terms of raw power, but she keeps making tactical errors. She separates Naruto and Sasuke instead of finishing one of them immediately. She gets distracted by their resemblance to her sons. She even gets caught off guard by Naruto's sexy reverse harem technique, which is genuinely embarrassing for an all-powerful goddess. Black Zetsu has to keep advising her throughout the fight because Kaguya doesn't instinctively know how to press advantages. She's not stupid, but she's inexperienced as a combatant in a way that Madara never was. This is why she feels unsatisfying as a villain despite being the strongest. Madara had motivation, we understood. He wanted to create a perfect world because the real one had taken everything from him. He was wrong, but we could see how he got there. His ideology was the dark mirror of the series' themes about peace and connection. Kaguya wants chakra back because it's hers. That's basically it. She's possessive about power in a way that doesn't connect to any of the themes the series had been building. She doesn't care about peace or war or the ninja system. She just wants her stuff back. Madara had history with the cast. He was connected to Hashirama, to the Uchiha clan, to the entire founding of the ninja village system. His defeat would have meant something to Sasuke, to Naruto's inherited will, to the themes of ending cycles of hatred. Kaguya has history with people who died centuries ago. Her connection to the main cast is purely genetic, many generations removed. Defeating her is an achievement, but it doesn't resolve any of the emotional conflicts the series had been building. This is why most fans consider the Kaguya arc a disappointment, even though her power level is appropriate for a final boss. She's the strongest character in the original series, but strength isn't what makes a good villain. What Kaguya does accomplish, from a world-building perspective, is establishing the Otsutsuki as the true ceiling of power in the Naruto universe. Before Kaguya, the power scale was bounded by human limitations. Even Madara, as strong as he got, was still essentially a very powerful ninja. He trained, he collected abilities, he augmented himself with various power-ups. His strength was the result of human ambition and effort pushed to its absolute maximum. Kaguya represents something beyond that. She's an alien being from a clan that travels between worlds, consuming planets and harvesting chakra. The power we see in the Naruto world isn't even native to it. It all comes from an outside source that sees humanity as a crop to be cultivated. This sets up everything that follows in Boruto: Momoshiki, Kinshiki, Ishiki. The entire threat model of the sequel series is built on the foundation that Kaguya establishes. There are beings out there who make even Six Paths level fighters look small. For the original series, Kaguya is a disappointing final boss, but for the franchise as a whole, she's an important expansion of what's possible. Is she scaled properly? Yes. She's stronger than Madara, which is necessary for the plot to make any sense. She can only be sealed, not killed, which establishes the Otsutsuki as threats beyond normal combat. Is she a good character? That's a different question, and most fans would say no. Power scaling doesn't care about good writing. It only cares about feats and statements. By those metrics, Kaguya sits exactly where she should, at the very top of the original series' power hierarchy, the ceiling that even god-tier fighters couldn't break through. She just happens to be a boring ceiling. Tailed beasts ranked, it's not about the tails. Everyone assumes more tails means more power. 9 is stronger than 8. 8 is stronger than 7. All the way down to poor Shukaku at the bottom, the weakest of the tailed beasts with his single lonely tail. Except that's not quite how it works. The tail count does correlate with raw chakra reserves, but raw chakra isn't everything. Each tailed beast has unique abilities that can make them far more effective in certain situations than their tail count would suggest. And more importantly, the Jinchuriki hosting the beast matters way more than which beast they're hosting. Let's break down each tailed beast and figure out where they actually stand. Shukaku, the one tail, gets the most disrespect in the fandom. He's literally the butt of jokes from other tailed beasts. When they all gathered during the war, Kurama specifically mocked him for having only one tail. But Shukaku has something no other tailed beast has: sealing techniques. His sand can create cursed seals powerful enough to restrain other tailed beasts. During the war, Shukaku's sealing jutsu was instrumental in restraining the 10-tail statue. That's not raw power, that's utility that punches way above his weight class. He also has the ability to manipulate sand and create sand-based defenses, which Gaara inherited and developed into one of the most broken defensive abilities in the series. Gaara's ultimate defense came from Shukaku's influence, and that defense blocked attacks from fighters far beyond what a one-tail's chakra should handle. Shukaku is the weakest in terms of raw chakra. He's far from useless. Matatabi, the two tails, is a flaming cat made entirely of blue fire. Her specialty is exactly what you'd expect: fire release at an absurd scale. She can create and control flames hot enough to damage almost anything. We don't get to see much of Matatabi in action because she was captured off-screen by Hidan and Kakuzu. Her Jinchuriki Yugito was a skilled fighter who could fully transform into the two tails, but even that wasn't enough against two Akatsuki members working together. Matatabi ranks low partly because we just don't have many feats for her. What we do know suggests she's a straightforward powerhouse, without the utility abilities that make some lower-tailed beasts punch above their weight. Isobu, the three tails, is the giant turtle. He's unique among tailed beasts for having been killed and revived during the series timeline. When Rin died with Isobu sealed inside her, the beast eventually regenerated and was found swimming in a lake, no Jinchuriki required. Isobu's abilities center on water manipulation and his nearly impenetrable shell. He can create massive water-based attacks, and his defensive capabilities are substantial. During the Fourth War, his coral-based techniques proved effective at restraining opponents. The Three Tails also has the dubious distinction of being captured by Deidara and Tobi in what might be the most anticlimactic tailed beast capture in the series. Tobi literally claims credit for catching him, and while we never see exactly how it happened, the fact that pre-reveal Tobi pulled it off suggests Isobu isn't the most difficult beast to handle. Son Goku, the Four Tails, is the giant monkey and one of the more characterful tailed beasts. He's prickly about being called by his tail number, insisting on his actual name. His relationship with his Jinchuriki Roshi was actually pretty good by tailed beast standards. Son Goku's unique ability is lava release, combining fire and earth chakra into molten rock. This is a Kekkei Genkai that his Jinchuriki can access, making it one of the more directly useful tailed beast powers. Roshi was known specifically for his lava techniques. During the war, Son Goku was the first tailed beast Naruto managed to free from Obito's control by removing the chakra receiver embedded in his body. This gave us one of the better looks at a tailed beast's personality, with Son Goku grudgingly acknowledging Naruto's determination despite his initial skepticism. Kokuo, the Five Tails, is the horse-dolphin hybrid. His specialty is steam release, combining water and fire to create superheated steam. This sounds less impressive than lava, but steam-based attacks can be devastating and harder to defend against than visible flames. Kokuo's most notable characteristic is his speed. Among the tailed beasts, he's considered one of the fastest. His Jinchuriki Han was known for using steam-enhanced taijutsu, essentially using the Five Tails' power to boost his physical combat abilities rather than relying on massive chakra blasts. We don't get much of Kokuo in the story, but his speed-focused abilities suggest a different combat style than most tailed beasts. Where others overwhelm with raw power, Kokuo might actually be more effective in a straight fight than his tail count suggests. Seiken, the Six Tails, is the giant slug. His unique ability is producing corrosive substances, essentially acid and alkaline attacks that can dissolve nearly anything. He can also produce sticky substances to trap opponents. Saiken's Jinchuriki Utakata was a missing nin from the Hidden Mist who could use Saiken's powers through bubble-based techniques. The bubbles could carry corrosive substances or explode on contact. It's an unusual fighting style that's hard to predict and counter. Among the mid-tier tailed beasts, Saiken might actually be underrated. Corrosive abilities ignore conventional defenses. It doesn't matter how tough your armor is if it's getting dissolved on contact. Chomei, the Seven Tails, is the flying beetle. This is notable because Chomei is the only tailed beast capable of sustained flight. He has 6 wings that count as his tails, plus 1 regular tail. Flight is a massive tactical advantage that shouldn't be underestimated. During the war, Chomei's aerial mobility made him difficult to pin down. His Jinchuriki Fu could also use this flight ability, which would make her one of the most mobile combatants in any fight. Chomei can also produce a blinding powder from his wings, and has shown the ability to create cocoons. His insect-based abilities are weird compared to the more straightforward elemental powers of other tailed beasts, but weird can be effective. Now we get to the top tier, and this is where the tail count actually starts mattering more directly. Gyuki, the 8 tails, is the giant ox octopus. His tentacles can regenerate, his ink can blind opponents or create clones, and his raw chakra is second only to Kurama. More importantly, Gyuki has the best relationship with his Jinchuriki of any tailed beast. Killer Bee and Gyuki are genuine partners. They work together seamlessly, share techniques, and actually like each other. This matters enormously because a Jinchuriki fighting against their beast's will is working at a fraction of their potential. Bee can fully transform into Gyuki, use partial transformations for combat, fire-tailed beast balls, and access all of Gyuki's regeneration abilities. The combination of raw 8 tails power with Bee's combat skill and their perfect cooperation makes them one of the most effective fighting forces in the series. During the war, Bee and Gyuki fought multiple reincarnated Jinchuriki and held their own against impossible odds. When the 10 Tails was being formed, Bee was one of the last fighters still standing. Kurama, the 9 Tails, is the strongest tailed beast by a significant margin. His chakra reserves dwarf even Gyuki's. The gap between 8 and 9 tails is much larger than the gap between any other consecutive pair. But here's where it gets complicated. For most of the series, Naruto only had half of Kurama. Minato split Kurama into yin and yang halves when he sealed the beast. The yang half went into Naruto. The yin half was sealed inside Minato himself. This means that Naruto's Kurama, the one we see throughout Shippuden, is operating at half capacity. Half Kurama is still monstrously powerful. He could match the other 8-tailed beasts combined in terms of raw chakra output. When Naruto finally gained Kurama's cooperation, even the half version made him one of the strongest fighters on the planet. Full Kurama, which Naruto gains after the war when both halves reunite, is on another level entirely. The difference between half and full Kurama is enormous. It's like comparing a sports car to a rocket ship. They're both fast, but one of them can leave the atmosphere. This creates interesting scaling questions. Is half Kurama stronger than Gyuki? Probably yes, but not by as much as you'd think. The gap between half Kurama and Gyuki is smaller than the gap between half Kurama and full Kurama. And then there's the 10 Tails. The 10 Tails isn't just the sum of its parts. When the 9-tailed beasts are combined, the resulting entity is fundamentally different from any individual beast. It's less intelligent, more instinctual, and vastly more powerful. The 10 Tails tailed beast ball could destroy mountain ranges. Its raw chakra output dwarfed anything the individual beasts could produce. When it started transforming toward its final form, it became the God Tree, which could drain chakra from every living thing on the planet. But the 10 Tails without a Jinchuriki is actually less effective than you'd expect. It attacks wildly without strategy. It can be distracted and redirected. Its power is enormous but unfocused. This is why Jinchuriki matters so much. Obito, as the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, was exponentially more dangerous than the raw 10 Tails. He could direct that power intelligently, use specific techniques, and apply the overwhelming chakra strategically. The same principle applies to all tailed beasts. Killer Bee with Gyuki is more effective than most Jinchuriki with stronger beasts, because Bee knows how to use what he has. Naruto with a cooperative Kurama is more effective than Naruto fighting against Kurama's influence, even though the chakra available is technically the same. So how would I actually rank the tailed beasts? By raw power alone, Kurama is greater than Gyuki, is greater than Chomei, is greater than Saiken, is greater than Kokuo, is greater than Sun, Goku is greater than Isobu, is greater than Matatabi, is greater than Shukaku. The tail count mostly holds. By combat effectiveness, including abilities, Kurama is greater than Gyuki, is greater than Shukaku, is greater than Sun, Goku is greater than Chomei, is greater than Seiken, is greater than Kokuo, is greater than Matatabi, is greater than Isobu. Shukaku's sealing abilities and utility push him way up despite his chakra disadvantage. By how dangerous their Jinchuriki actually were, Killer Bee and Gyuki is greater than Naruto and Kurama before full cooperation, is greater than Yagura, and Isobu is greater than everyone else. The host matters more than the beast. The tailed beast ball is often used as a scaling benchmark, and there's good reason for that. Every tailed beast can use it. The size and power scales with the beast's chakra. Comparing tailed beast balls gives you a direct measurement of relative power. By that metric, Kurama's tailed beast ball is roughly equal to 5 other beasts combining theirs. That's stated directly during the war. Even at half power, Kurama could match multiple other tailed beasts working together. But a tailed beast ball from any of the 9 is still a city-destroying attack. The weakest tailed beast ball would still annihilate almost any opponent in the series. At a certain point, asking which nuclear bomb is bigger becomes academic. The tailed beasts are characters with personalities, histories, and relationships. The series ultimately argues that treating them as weapons to be measured and controlled was humanity's mistake all along. Naruto earned their respect by seeing them as individuals. That's more important than any tier list. But yeah, Kurama would absolutely demolish Shukaku in a fight. Some things are just true. Where the ceiling actually is God tier explained. There's strong. There's really strong. There's Kage level, S rank, legendary ninja status. And then there's God tier. These are different conversations. A character being powerful doesn't make them God tier. A character being the strongest in their village doesn't make them God tier. God tier is a specific category reserved for fighters who have fundamentally transcended what ninja combat is supposed to be. Let me draw the line clearly. God tier characters share a specific set of characteristics. They can fly. They can regenerate from wounds that would kill anyone else. Their attacks operate on a scale that threatens landscapes rather than individuals. Most importantly, they cannot be defeated through conventional ninja techniques. You can't beat them by being faster or having better jutsu or outsmarting them in combat. You need hacks abilities, sealing techniques, or your own God tier power to even compete. By this definition, the confirmed God tiers at the end of the original series are Kaguya Otsutsuki, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, Madara Uchiha as the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki with 6 Paths Sage Mode, and Sasuke Uchiha with his Rinnegan. That's it. 5 characters. Everyone else, no matter how impressive their feats, falls short of this threshold in some meaningful way. Let's start with what these 5 have in common. 6 Paths Chakra. Every single one of them either possesses it directly or gained it through connection to someone who does. Kaguya ate the chakra fruit and became the first wielder of divine power on Earth. Hagoromo inherited that power from her and became the Sage of 6 Paths. Madara obtained it by becoming the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto and Sasuke received it directly from Hagoromo's spirit. This isn't coincidence. 6 Paths Chakra is the entry requirement for God tier. Without it, you cannot access the abilities that define this level of combat. Truth-seeking balls, yin-yang release, dimensional travel. These techniques require 6 Paths power to perform. Flight is another common thread. All 5 God tier characters can fly. This seems like a minor ability compared to their other powers, but it's actually significant because it represents freedom from the physical constraints that limit normal ninja. You can't trap them in terrain. You can't use positioning against them. The battlefield itself becomes irrelevant when your opponent can simply leave it. Regeneration or immortality is the third requirement. Kaguya and Madara as Jinchuriki could regenerate from almost any wound. Naruto's connection to all 9-tailed beasts gave him healing that bordered on immortal. Sasuke's Rinnegan included access to healing techniques. Hagoromo lived for centuries and could manifest even after death. Normal damage doesn't stick to God tier fighters. Now let's talk about the near misses. These are characters who touched God tier power temporarily or came close without quite reaching it. Double Mangekyo Sharingan Kakashi is the most obvious example. When Obito's spirit granted Kakashi both of his eyes from beyond death, Kakashi gained access to a perfect Susanoo infused with Kamui. For approximately 10 minutes, Kakashi was operating at God tier. He could fly. He could phase through attacks. His offensive and defensive capabilities matched what Naruto and Sasuke were doing. But it was borrowed power with a time limit. When Obito's chakra ran out, Kakashi returned to being an elite Jonin with no Sharingan at all. He touched the ceiling but never belonged there. 8th Gate Guy is similar but different. His power came entirely from within rather than being borrowed. When Guy opened all 8 gates against Madara, his attack was described as the strongest Madara had ever faced. That's not hyperbole. That's a statement from someone who fought Hashirama for decades and had become a god himself. Guy was operating at god-tier attack power. His Night Guy technique damaged the Ten Tails Jinchuriki when few other attacks could, but he had no sustained combat capability. He was a burning meteor, incredibly destructive, but destined to burn out in minutes. The 8 gates represents the absolute ceiling for human physical capability without special bloodlines or chakra gifts, and that ceiling is high enough to threaten gods, but it's not sustainable, which means Guy doesn't belong in god tier as a permanent resident. Nagato is an interesting case. He possessed the Rinnegan, which should theoretically grant him access to god tier abilities. His 6 paths techniques were formidable. He destroyed Konoha single-handedly. When reanimated with a restored body, he overwhelmed both Naruto and Killer Bee simultaneously. But Nagato's Rinnegan was transplanted from Madara, not awakened naturally. He could use its abilities, but couldn't access its full potential. He never gained flight. His Chibaku Tensei, while impressive, operated on a much smaller scale than what Madara or Kaguya demonstrated. Nagato is the strongest character below god tier, but the gap between him and the true ceiling is still significant. The same applies to Pain, since Pain was just Nagato operating through corpse proxies. The 6 paths of Pain were formidable enough to challenge any village in the world. Against god-tier opponents, they would be swept aside. Now let's address the question everyone wants answered. Where does Hashirama actually land? Hashirama Senju is called the God of Shinobi. He defeated Madara Uchiha when Madara had the 9 tails under his control. His wood release could suppress tailed beasts. His healing regeneration worked without hand seals. By any reasonable standard, he was the strongest ninja of his era by a massive margin. But Hashirama is not god tier. He couldn't fly. His regeneration, while impressive, had limits that god tier healing doesn't. His attacks, powerful as they were, operated on a village scale rather than a continental scale. When Madara gained 10 tails power, he explicitly became stronger than Hashirama ever was. The ceiling moved above where Hashirama could reach. Hashirama exists in a tier of his own, below god tier, but above every other conventional ninja in history. He's the ceiling of what's possible without 6 paths enhancement. He's the benchmark against which legends are measured. But he's not in the same category as his mother's progenitor, or the aliens who follow her. The war arc created significant inflation in the power scale, and this affects how we view everything below god tier. Characters who seemed invincible early in the series became clearly outclassed by the end. The 5 Kage combined couldn't defeat Madara when he was just reanimated, before he even became the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. That same Madara was massively weaker than his final form. This means earlier feats need to be contextualized carefully. Pain destroying Konoha seemed like the pinnacle of destruction when it happened. By the end of the war, it was a moderate feat that several characters could replicate or exceed. The way to think about god tier is as reality warpers. Normal ninja manipulate chakra to enhance their physical abilities and create techniques. God tier characters manipulate reality itself. They can create dimensions, reshape matter, nullify any conventional attack. Fighting them isn't really fighting in the traditional sense. It's more like trying to challenge the rules of the universe. That's why the line matters. Below god tier, you can theoretically win through superior skill, strategy, or matchup advantage. Against god tier, you need your own reality warping abilities or you simply cannot compete, regardless of how skilled you are. The 5 characters at the true ceiling earned their place by transcending what the series established as possible. They're not just stronger than other ninja, they're playing a different game entirely. And there you have it. Roughly 700 episodes of power scaling discourse condensed into a format suitable for drifting off to. We've covered everything from the most basic scaling principles to the literal gods at the top of the hierarchy. We've debated whether Itachi could beat his cancer if he just believed hard enough. We've acknowledged that Kishimoto probably didn't plan all of this out in advance, and the scaling inconsistencies prove it. But here's the thing about power scaling. It's not really about finding the right answer. there is no right answer. Kishimoto wasn't thinking about who would win hypothetical battles when he wrote most of these scenes. He was telling a story about a lonely kid who wanted acknowledgement, and the battles served that story rather than the other way around. The reason power scaling is fun isn't because we'll ever definitively prove that Minato could beat Tobirama or that Pain would lose to Itachi. It's because Kishimoto built a system with just enough internal consistency to argue about. The chakra system has rules. The abilities have defined strengths and weaknesses. The characters have stated limits that they push past in dramatic moments. That framework invites analysis. It makes you think about what you watched rather than just consuming it passively. And honestly, thinking about anything that hard is going to teach you something about logic, about evidence, about how to construct an argument. Power scaling is just literary analysis for people who like punching. The Naruto power system went through massive inflation over its run. Characters who seemed invincible in Part 1 became footnotes by the war arc. The ceiling kept rising until we literally reached actual gods from outer space. Some fans hated that progression. Others loved it. Either way, it gave us almost 20 years of arguments that show no signs of stopping. New generations of fans will discover Naruto. They'll get to the Chunin exams and think Rock Lee is the coolest thing ever. They'll reach the Pain arc and have their minds blown. They'll hit the war arc and either embrace the escalation or get annoyed by it. And then they'll log onto the internet and start arguing about who would win in a fight. That's the cycle. That's how anime fandom works. The power scaling debates aren't a distraction from the story. They're an extension of it, a way of staying engaged with fiction long after the final episode ends. So if you've made it this far, congratulations. You now have opinions about fictional combat that you can defend at length. Use this power responsibly. And if you drifted off somewhere around the Itachi discourse, that's fine. He'd probably say that was your fate anyway. If you enjoyed our video today, subscribe to our channel.